New episode, Sparkles OMG. The Butcher, Son is the family savior. Full movie Chinese drama Growing Heart review and analysis. Growing Heart Betrayal on a Mourning Day. Stepping into the moment when Chang Feng prepared to leave the mountain revealed a scene steeped in deep ritual and silent gravity, where discipline and reverence intertwined with a subtle tension that underscored his entire upbringing. His master, the esteemed martial sage famed for the Heaven's Blade, commanded a presence that seemed to pause the very winds around him, the peaks themselves reflecting the weight of his authority. On the surface, it appeared as a simple farewell, a master offering guidance to his disciple before a journey. Yet beneath that simplicity lay a rich tapestry of restraint, destiny, and the burdens inherent in possessing extraordinary power. Every glance and gesture carried a meaning shaped by years of rigorous training, every word a deliberate preparation for the path Chang Feng was about to undertake. The master's acknowledgement of Chang Feng's talent was far from casual, it bore the solemnity of truth. After nearly a decade of intense cultivation, the young man's swordsmanship had already eclipsed his master's, and the recognition was delivered not with prideful boast, but with measured admiration and a trace of cautious apprehension. In the master's calm tone and composed expression, there was an unmistakable weight, as if each syllable carried the responsibility of forewarning a prodigy about the unseen consequences of power. Chang Feng, disciplined and humble from years on the mountain, listened intently, understanding that such acknowledgement was a preparation as much as it was a compliment. When Chang Feng formally requested to descend the mountain, his sincerity was evident. His intention was not driven by ambition or the desire for fame, nor by mere curiosity about the world below. It was a profound yearning to seek his parents, known to him only through fragmented memories and a single jade pendant serving as a tangible link to them. The master studied the pendant for a long moment, its surface catching the mountain light in a way that seemed almost purposeful, as though it held stories just beyond reach. This piece symbolized more than family, it embodied identity itself. Recognizing the strength of this internal pull, the master eventually granted permission, though with caution. The world beyond the mountains was vast, unpredictable, and often harsh. Yet shielding Chang Feng indefinitely would be both impossible and unjust. Granting him the right to journey into the unknown acknowledged that his personal growth now mattered as much as martial cultivation. The tone shifted profoundly with the revelation of Chang Feng's unusual physiology. Calmly, the master disclosed that he possessed no dantian, a fundamental contradiction to all known martial practices. Yet this absence was not a flaw, but rather the mark of the rare dragon blood holy body, a condition granting unparalleled potential. The revelation reframed Chang Feng's existence entirely. What might have been considered a fatal deficiency in another was the foundation of unmatched power in him. The master's eyes reflected both deep respect and cautious foresight, aware that such a secret, once revealed, could unsettle the balance of the martial world. He warned Chang Feng of the dangers of using his abilities recklessly. His power could induce panic, disrupt hierarchies, and attract factions eager either to control or to destroy him. The council was protective, urging restraint even in moments of danger. Chang Feng accepted the warning with quiet humility, understanding that power without discipline could lead to destruction. Before departure, the master reminded him of the jade pendant's importance. More than a memento, it was a potential guide toward the truth of his origins. The world below was layered with shadow and light, offering paths but no guarantees. His final guidance, to proceed with caution, observe carefully, and act judiciously, underscored a philosophy where wisdom was as critical as strength. Chang Feng left the mountain with determination and reflective calm, carrying the dual weight of his extraordinary abilities and the mission that awaited him. His departure marked not just a journey, but a transformation into someone who would balance immense power with insight and responsibility. Upon reaching Zhang City, Chang Feng immediately sensed a volatile tension in the air, a current of conflict running through its streets. At the central training grounds, he witnessed the clash between Lu Shan, master of Baichuan Martial Arts Hall, and the Gao family, both vying for supremacy. The fight escalated quickly. Despite Lu Shan's efforts, the Gao family's strength proved overwhelming. When Lu Shan fell, the city seemed to pause under the weight of the Gao family's dominance. Their arrogance radiated unmistakably, and attention briefly shifted to Chang Feng. Noting his modest attire and calm stance, a Gao family member dismissed him with contempt, calling him a dirty pork butcher. The insult, intended to provoke, had no effect. Chang Feng's composure conveyed a quiet confidence and a mastery of restraint honed through years of discipline. Taking advantage of the chaos, Chang Feng acted decisively yet subtly, guiding Lu Shan and his daughter out of immediate danger. His movements were efficient, controlled, and calculated to avoid unnecessary exposure of his abilities. The young woman, initially shaken, received silent reassurance from him, while Lu Shan, still groggy from his defeat, followed with determination. Together, they navigated narrow alleys, avoiding the Gao family's notice. The confrontation continued in the city center, but the intended victims had already slipped beyond reach. Chang Feng's guidance reflected a profound understanding of both strategy and discretion, his calm presence acting as a stabilizing force amid disorder. Upon reaching the relative safety of Baichuan Martial Arts Hall, the emotional undercurrents deepened. Lady Lu experienced an inexplicable sense of familiarity toward Cheng Feng, drawn to the quiet strength he exuded. Presenting the jade pendant, Cheng Feng unknowingly triggered an emotional upheaval in Madame Lin, Lady Lu's mother. She immediately recognized the pendant as the one she had crafted for her son years prior, evoking a torrent of suppressed memories and emotions. The sight of it shattered her composure, revealing both grief and long-held hope. Before she could act on this recognition, Lu Shan interjected, forbidding her from acknowledging Cheng Feng as her son. His concern for reputation and the martial hall's prestige clashed sharply with maternal instinct, creating a palpable tension. The hall's disciples exacerbated the situation, mocking Cheng Feng, labeling him a good-for-nothing without a dantian, and encouraging him to leave. Their derision highlighted a culture of superficial judgment based on lineage and ability. Yet Cheng Feng remained composed, unmoved by insults, his restraint emphasizing a stark contrast to their pettiness. Madame Lin's grief intensified as she struggled against Lu Shan's authority, witnessing the cruelty of both disciples and patriarch. The jade pendant in Cheng Feng's hand remained a silent emblem of truth, family, and a destiny in the process of reclamation. Later, during a routine training session, a remarkable event occurred. Heaven's Gate, a symbol of the martial hall's prestige and security, was split in half with unprecedented precision. The strike carried an almost otherworldly control, highlighting a level of mastery that defied conventional expectations. The disciples gathered in astonishment, recognizing that such a display could not have been achieved through ordinary means, and the air around the fractured gate seemed to hold its breath in awe. Through these events, Cheng Feng's journey in Zhang City unfolded as a crucible of discipline, power, and moral integrity. He navigated conflict with strategy and composure, revealed latent potential without arrogance, and confronted the complexities of family, loyalty, and reputation with quiet strength. Each encounter, whether with Gao family arrogance, Baichuan disciples, scorn, or Madame Lin's emotional recognition, revealed the intricate interplay of social hierarchy, martial prowess, and personal destiny. The tensions, insults, and extraordinary displays of skill served as both trials and clarifications, demonstrating that Cheng Feng's path would require wisdom as much as strength, and that the balance between restraint and action would define his emerging role within the martial world. In Zhang City, the interplay of ambition, power, and hidden truth had only begun to surface, and Cheng Feng's presence promised to reshape the dynamics around him with quiet yet profound impact. The courtyard of the martial hall was filled with a tense, electric atmosphere as disciples and onlookers alike gathered around the scene of the recently split Heaven's Gate. The disciples stared at the severed metal in disbelief, murmuring among themselves, trying to comprehend how such a perfect cut could exist. Some reached out to touch the cool surface where the steel had been sliced, feeling the smoothness that indicated not reckless power but terrifying mastery. A weighty tension settled across the courtyard, adding a sense of gravity that none of them had expected during what should have been an ordinary day. Soon, the whispers turned into anxious discussions. Everyone in the martial hall knew that even the top-ranked expert on the blade ranking, famed for unparalleled skill, had once attempted to leave his mark on Heaven's Gate. Yet despite his reputation, the deepest cut he had managed was merely half an inch. The fact that someone had now split the entire gate into two equal parts left the disciples shaken. They began comparing the legendary Blade Master's minor indentation to this astonishing new gash, realizing the difference was not one of inches but of entire realms of ability. The more they thought about it, the more the shock spread through the crowd as they tried to reconcile this impossibility with their understanding of high-level martial skill. As they pieced together their observations, a collective conclusion formed almost naturally. Someone with strength far surpassing the first rank of the blade ranking must have passed through. The idea was extraordinary, bordering on unbelievable, yet the evidence stood before their eyes. If such a figure existed, they reasoned, then this person carried the potential to alter the balance of power not only within the martial hall but in the entire region. Conversations shifted from fear to hope. Some disciples speculated that this mysterious expert might be connected to the Academy's recent troubles, perhaps even someone capable of protecting the sect if needed. The possibility felt like a lifeline, a sudden turning point in a period marked by uncertainty. Luke Sun arrived shortly after, drawn by the commotion. As the head of the martial hall, he sensed the weight of the situation immediately. His gaze moved slowly over the split gate, and a troubled expression crossed his face, deepening with each passing second. It was not only the destruction itself that disturbed him but the implication behind it. Someone with unimaginable power had been here, within the boundaries of his sect, and none of them had been aware of it. The realization stung, both as a leader and as a practitioner who had spent his life pursuing mastery. His thoughts soon drifted to the events of the previous day. He remembered clearly that only one outsider had approached the gate around that time, Tan Fong. The young man's appearance at the martial hall had already caused emotional turbulence, especially after the jade pendant incident involving Madame Lin, and after the tense arguments over whether he could be acknowledged by the family. Luke Sun had been firm in rejecting him, believing the boy to be talentless, a butcher unworthy of association, someone without a dantian, and thus someone incapable of contributing anything meaningful to the martial tradition. Yet now, as he stared at the cleaved gate, Luke Sun felt a sharp unease that he could not easily dismiss. He began to question the timeline carefully. If the gate had been intact before Tan Fong's arrival, and only discovered split afterward, the implication was obvious. But the idea seemed absurd. How could someone rumored to be a powerless outsider accomplish what the top blade master could not? Luke Sun found himself caught between skepticism and reluctant suspicion. His instincts as a martial artist told him that no ordinary person, especially someone labeled useless, could have performed such a feat. Still, he kept returning to the fact that Tan Fong had been the only one present. Around him, disciples continued theorizing, unaware of Luke Sun's internal conflict. They saw the severed steel as a sign of hope, but he recognized it as both a potential blessing and a threat. If the mysterious individual were indeed connected to the hall, they would need to understand his intentions. If he were not, the situation could be even more complicated. Luke Sun's uncertainty grew heavier, forcing him into a rare moment of introspection. Had he misjudged something, or someone? In the midst of this tension, a subtle detail nagged at him. He remembered Tan Fong's calm demeanor from earlier encounters, his unwavering composure even while facing insults from the disciples. There had been a quiet confidence in the young man, something that did not fit the image of a helpless outsider. Luke Sun began reconsidering each interaction, feeling an uncomfortable shift in his perception. He wondered whether his previous judgments, based on status and reputation, had blinded him to something crucial. Still, the idea remained too startling to accept outright. Luke Sun hesitated, torn between disbelief and emerging possibility. The contradiction gnawed at him, but he could not bring himself to make a definitive conclusion. Instead, he remained silent, allowing the mystery to grow while the severed gate stood as undeniable evidence of a power that exceeded all expectations. Yet even without speaking aloud, the suspicion lingered, quiet, persistent, and impossible to ignore. Whether he admitted it or not, Luke Sun now considered the possibility that the one who split Heaven's Gate might indeed be Tan Fong. Meanwhile, Lady Lin moved quietly through the corridor, her steps soft enough to avoid attracting attention from the other members of the household. The tension within the martial hall had grown increasingly heavy in recent days, especially after the disputes surrounding Tan Fong's identity and the jade pendant incident. Yet despite the strict atmosphere, Lady Lin's concern for the young man compelled her to act. She carried a bundle of clothes and a carefully prepared portion of food, items chosen with deliberate care so he would not feel neglected or alone. When she arrived at the secluded corner where Tan Fong had been staying, she greeted him with a warm expression that softened the lines of worry on her face. Her gestures revealed the instinctive tenderness of a mother. Though she attempted to maintain a calm demeanor, her eyes held emotions too deep to conceal. She set the clothes down neatly, smoothing them gently, then placed the food beside them. Afterward, she took a moment to look at Tan Fong directly, her gaze filled with reassurance. She encouraged him with quiet sincerity, telling him that a true mother would never abandon her child. Her words carried a firmness rooted not in authority but in heartfelt conviction, as if she hoped her voice alone might protect him from the pain he had endured. The atmosphere between them was weighted with unspoken truths, and the compassion in her tone lingered like a comforting presence. Tan Fong listened to her, momentarily taken aback by her kindness. Throughout his life, he had grown accustomed to being dismissed, belittled, or overlooked, especially by those who judged him for lacking a dantian. But Lady Lin's gentle concern broke through those layers of past hurt, stirring something vulnerable within him. When he finally spoke, his voice was sincere and tinged with emotion. He admitted that her warmth made him wish she were his mother. The statement was simple, yet it carried profound feeling, an expression of longing he rarely allowed himself to acknowledge. Lady Lin's reaction was immediate but controlled. She looked at him with deep affection, her breath unsteady for a moment. A soft tremor passed through her, revealing a truth she desperately wanted to share but knew she could not. Her throat tightened, and she pressed her lips together to steady herself. Although she seemed on the verge of speaking, the weight of circumstances prevented her from saying what she longed to say. Instead, she remained silent, allowing only her eyes to communicate the sorrow she could not voice. The emotional restraint she demonstrated made the moment even more powerful, highlighting the profound connection she felt toward him even though she maintained outward composure. After a quiet pause, Lady Lin turned her attention toward the sounds coming from the courtyard. A disturbance had begun to rise, footsteps, hurried movements, and the unmistakable murmur of agitation among the disciples. She recognized these signs immediately. The Cao family had arrived to issue a challenge, and their presence meant that tension within the martial hall was about to escalate sharply. Her worry intensified, and she looked back at Tan Fong with urgency. She reminded him that he was vulnerable, not because of lack of character, but because he had no dantian. That physical limitation placed him at risk in ways others could not fully understand. She spoke quickly, insisting that he could not become entangled in the confrontation that was brewing. Though her voice remained gentle, it carried a note of firm insistence. She urged him to leave through the back door, away from the path where the Cao family would pass. Her intention was clear: she wanted to protect him from any danger that might arise from this conflict. The sincerity of her concern created an emotional contrast with the increasingly hostile atmosphere outside. While the martial hall prepared for confrontation, Lady Lin acted with calm resolve, guided by the instinct to safeguard the young man. She seemed almost relieved that there was a discreet exit he could use, a route that allowed him to leave without drawing attention. Her actions reflected not fear but the understanding of a mother who knew the harsh realities of martial disputes and the consequences they could bring. Tan Fong hesitated for a moment. He understood her reasoning, and he recognized the gravity of the situation. Yet he also sensed the depth of her concern, which felt unusually comforting in the middle of so much turmoil. He accepted the bundle she had prepared for him, and the moment he did, Lady Lin's expression softened again, though traces of anxiety lingered around her eyes. She stepped slightly closer, as though wanting to offer further reassurance but unsure if she should say more. The noise from the courtyard grew louder, confirming that the Cao family's arrival was imminent. Lady Lin took a steady breath and emphasized one last time that he needed to go at once. Her tone carried the unmistakable urgency of someone trying to protect a loved one from approaching danger. Though she remained poised, her movements were sharp with determination, and her concern was unmistakably genuine. When Tan Fong finally turned toward the back exit, Lady Lin watched him with an expression that combined relief and sorrow. She did not call after him, nor did she attempt to prolong the moment. Instead, she allowed him to leave with dignity and safety, trusting that her quiet guidance would help him avoid the conflict she feared. As he disappeared from sight, she closed her eyes briefly, steadying herself against the overwhelming mix of emotions she could not openly reveal. The martial hall outside continued to stir with rising tension, but Lady Lin remained in the quiet space he had just left. Her posture was controlled, yet her heart was clearly burdened. The silent struggle between her protective instincts and the secrets she could not reveal only deepened the emotional weight of the moment. Despite the strict rules and expectations placed upon her within the household, her actions demonstrated the unwavering depth of her maternal compassion. In this brief yet powerful encounter, Lady Lin revealed the strength of a mother's devotion, even when circumstances prevented her from speaking the truth. Her farewell to Tan Fong was not loud or dramatic. Instead, it was shaped by restraint, tenderness, and determination, forming a moment that reflected both her hidden sorrow and her quiet resolve to protect him in any way she could. The tension hanging over the martial hall reached its peak when news arrived that the Gao family had issued an official challenge on the life and death stage. The very name of that arena carried a weight that commanded seriousness. It was a place where honor, skill, and reputation were tested without restraint. The Gao family had chosen this battleground with deliberate provocation, knowing that the Lu family would have no choice but to accept. The challenge was not simply about martial supremacy but also about status, pride, and the long-brewing conflict between the two households. When the message was delivered, the disciples of the Lu family exchanged uneasy glances, fully aware of the high stakes behind this confrontation. As representatives of the Lu family gathered, Elder Lu Shan maintained a stern expression. Regardless of their internal tensions, the Lu family had to send someone to fight. The rules of the stage were absolute. Once a challenge was issued and accepted, withdrawal was considered an act of disgrace. The first fighter to step forward was the senior disciple of the martial hall. His posture showed determination, though the weight of responsibility rested heavily on his shoulders. The Gao family's disciples arrived with an air of confidence, and leading them was Gao Kang, ranked 9th on the blade ranking. His very presence exuded arrogance, and he carried himself with the self-assurance of someone who expected victory even before the first strike. When Gao Kang stepped onto the stage, his attitude was openly hostile. With mocking confidence, he insulted the Lu family's abilities and took the taunts even further by directing them at Tan Fong. He belittled him as though he had the right to judge, dismissing him as someone unworthy of being associated with martial arts. His tone was provoking, sharp, and intended to humiliate. The crowd murmured at his boldness, yet Gao Kang showed no restraint, continuing his disdain without hesitation. Even in a setting meant for disciplined warriors, he displayed a lack of respect that felt almost theatrical. The first clash began with sharp intensity. The senior disciple of the Lu family fought earnestly, but the gap in skill between him and the 9th-ranked blade expert quickly became apparent. The rapid sequences of strikes, the swift angles of attack, and the sheer force behind each movement showed why Gao Kang held his position on the blade ranking. As the duel progressed, the Lu family's disciples grew more anxious. The rhythm of the fight was slipping further out of their favor. Amid this tense atmosphere, Tan Fong observed quietly from the sidelines. Despite being previously dismissed and openly ridiculed, he kept a calm demeanor, watching the flow of movements with a measured gaze. Then, with a voice neither loud nor forceful but filled with clarity, he pointed out a precise method for the senior disciple to counter Gao Kang's attacks. His explanation was concise, rooted in deep understanding, and surprisingly perceptive for someone the others believed to be untrained. Those around him looked at him with surprise, not out of admiration, but sheer disbelief. The senior disciple attempted to follow Tan Fong's guidance, but Gao Kang adapted quickly. His attacks grew fiercer, and the Lu family representative struggled to regain momentum. Ultimately, he was unable to carry out the advised technique effectively. The defeat was not merely physical, it symbolized the growing pressure on the Lu family as the challenge continued. With the first match lost, tension grew thicker. The next fighter to step onto the stage was Lady Lu, the daughter of Lu Shan. Her expression was composed but resolute, showing a mixture of determination and responsibility. She was prepared not only to defend her family's honor but also to confront the disdain the Gao family had directed toward those under her household's protection. Her presence on the stage shifted the atmosphere slightly, bringing a sense of dignity and controlled strength. Before stepping forward fully, she listened as Tan Fong spoke again, this time with clear and deliberate instruction. He analyzed Gao Kang's fighting pattern with uncanny accuracy, pointing out that after delivering 3 consecutive strikes with his blade, Gao Kang consistently left his right elbow momentarily exposed. He explained that if she struck at that exact moment, she would catch him off guard. His advice was sharp, specific, and tactically sound. The precision of his insight surprised even those who had doubted him moments earlier. Lady Lu internalized the advice and stepped fully onto the stage. Gao Kang smirked when he saw her approach, seemingly amused that the Lu family had chosen to send her after their earlier failure. But his arrogance blinded him to the possibility that she had come prepared. The duel began with swift movements. Gao Kang repeated his aggressive style, delivering 3 powerful strikes in a fluid sequence just as Tan Fong had predicted. Lady Lu waited with composure, watching for the brief moment his elbow was exposed. When the opportunity arrived, she moved decisively. With a swift and accurate strike, she connected with the weak point Tan Fong had identified. The effect was immediate. Gao Kang's grip faltered, and his blade was knocked from his hand. Gasps rose from the crowd. The unexpected shift in momentum stunned both sides. Lady Lu had successfully disarmed a ranked blade expert, not through brute strength but through precision and tactical execution. The significance of this victory reverberated among the observers. While the fight had not yet determined the overall outcome of the challenge, the Liu family had managed to reclaim their dignity in a single decisive move. The fact that the turning point came from Tan Fong's guidance added another layer of complexity. Even elder Liu Shan, who had previously doubted him, could not ignore the remarkable accuracy of Tan Fong's instructions. In the aftermath of the duel, whispers spread through the martial hall. Tan Fong's calm observation, his clear analysis, and his ability to see flaws in the technique of a ranked expert stood in stark contrast to the reputation he had been given. Elder Liu Shan reviewed the sequence of events quietly, piecing together the implications. The level of insight displayed by Tan Fong was not something an ordinary person, or even a typical martial disciple, should possess. His guidance had been too precise and too profound to dismiss as mere coincidence. This growing realization sparked suspicion, and Elder Liu Shan found himself questioning whether Tan Fong was truly the untrained outsider he appeared to be. The possibility that his abilities surpassed those of the average fighter became increasingly difficult to deny. The atmosphere shifted subtly as this doubt took root, marking a turning point in how those around him viewed his presence. Through these moments on the life and death stage, filled with tension, humiliation, precision, and unexpected triumph, the true complexity of Tan Fong's hidden skill began to surface, reshaping the perception of everyone who witnessed the battles. The moment Gao Yang stepped forward, the atmosphere shifted from tense competition to imminent danger. Liu Shan, though respected, was no match for the blade-ranking powerhouse, and despite his determination to defend his family's honor, he was quickly overwhelmed. Gao Yang's strikes were precise and relentless, ultimately knocking Liu Shan down, shocking the disciples with the ease of his victory. As Gao Yang advanced, Madame Lin rushed forward, placing herself between her husband and the attack, sacrificing herself. Her final act revealed a profound truth. With her last breath, she confessed to Tan Fong that she was his mother, urging him to leave the hall immediately to survive, leaving him grief-stricken and stunned by the sudden, heartbreaking revelation. The story pauses here for now, ending on unresolved mysteries and emotions stretched tight like a thread waiting to snap. Each character stands on the edge of a new truth, but the real answers can only be found in the next episode. Stay tuned to discover what happens when the biggest secrets are finally forced into the light. And now, to keep the momentum going, let's move into an entirely new story, one inspired by the unfinished tale you just heard. This is not a continuation, but it carries the same emotional intensity, dramatic, gripping, and full of unexpected turns. Prepare yourself for a story that is bolder, sharper, and guaranteed to keep you hooked until the very end. Title: Betrayal on a Mourning Day. Ivy, the funeral is about to begin. Isn't Damien coming yet? Ivy Summers, dressed in mourning clothes, knelt before her mother's altar, the flames from the burning paper money reflecting off her pale face. She looked down at her nearly dead phone. Damien Lancaster's calls were still unanswered. Her mother had passed away, and Ivy, 7 months pregnant, had kept vigil at the altar for 7 days. Her husband of 3 years hadn't shown up once. Damien Lancaster was very busy with work, and Ivy had always tried to understand him. She told herself sensibly that Damien was probably busy with work. He's probably busy and can't make it. Ivy's face was still stained with tears as she burned the last of the paper money in her hands, struggled to prop up her heavy body, and said hoarsely, "Proceed with the funeral." Her Aunt Helen Kennedy, standing nearby, spoke with a strange tone. "Ivy, how busy can President Lancaster be, not showing his face for 7 days? It's as if he doesn't care about your mother at all." Her cousin Nina Summers sneered, "Mom, you've got it wrong. President Lancaster doesn't care about Auntie or my cousin, and oh, her unborn child as well." Their sarcastic voices were especially piercing, and Ivy's heart was filled with a bitterness that couldn't be hidden. Yet she still told herself that after they got married, Damien had always been a qualified husband. He wouldn't deliberately not come, he was just caught up with work. Just as she convinced herself, reality gave her a brutal slap in the face. Nina exclaimed as she looked at her phone, "Isn't that President Lancaster? He's trending on social media." Nina intentionally handed the phone to Ivy. Ivy looked down at the phone. It was a trending video from this morning, but the video was from last night. The title read, "President Damien Lancaster of the Lancaster Group rents out a venue to celebrate Miss Rachel Shaw's birthday for true love." In the video, under a night sky filled with magnificent fireworks, the man elegantly and dominantly sat on a chair, his deep eyes quietly watching the girl beside him. The girl's smile seemed more dazzling than the fireworks as she pointed at the display. The fireworks were brilliant, but Ivy's gaze was fixed on the man's back. She was intimately familiar with him and recognized that the man in the video was her husband, Damien Lancaster. So he was spending last night with another woman watching fireworks and celebrating her birthday. Ivy's mind went blank for a moment, her body stiff and unable to move. The sound of the fireworks intertwined with Nina's mocking voice continued, "Cousin, didn't you say your husband was busy? He's apparently so busy celebrating someone else's birthday at a private venue." Ivy clenched her fists, her mind filled with the image of Damien renting out a venue for fireworks to celebrate another woman's birthday. She thought he was busy. Even when her mother passed away, she handled it alone, afraid to bother him too much. 7 days, he didn't have time to return her calls or light incense for her mother, yet he had time to rent a venue and light fireworks for someone else's celebration. How ridiculous. The woman in the video was Damien's first love, the woman he deeply loved. And she was merely the woman old Master Lancaster asked Damien to marry, as a token of gratitude to her father for saving his life, hoping to provide her with lifelong support. For the past 3 years, Ivy knew he didn't love her, so she never dared to trouble Damien with her problems, nor did she dare to expect anything. Damien was a cold man who didn't understand romance, he didn't celebrate any holidays, his life revolved only around work. It wasn't until today that she realized Damien wasn't incapable of being romantic, he just wasn't willing to be romantic with her. Damien made Ivy the biggest joke with a splendid and grand fireworks display. Ivy gritted her teeth, forcing down the pain in her heart, and shifted her gaze away from the phone to appear less pathetic. Her mother's funeral still needed her management, she had to hold on. Ivy forced herself to bend down, picked up her mother's memorial tablet, and ignored the mocking gazes as she walked out. Ivy remembered her mother had wanted to see Damien one last time before she passed. At that time, she had called Damien many times, yet he didn't answer. Maybe he was with Rachel Shaw back then, too. Her mother had hoped she could be happy forever with Damien. But it might not be possible anymore. After managing everything alone, and after all the relatives and friends had finished eating and left, Ivy sat alone in the dining room chair. Damien arrived late, dressed in a black shirt. His handsome face showed little expression, but his gaze lingered on Ivy. For once, there was a hint of apology on his usually emotionless face. Supported by her belly, Ivy looked up at him, and the suppressed grievances surged up instantly. Ivy took a deep breath, swallowed the grievance hard, and showed no trace of emotion on her face, just finished with work. Damien didn't notice the fragility in her voice. Novel drama. There was a meeting during the day. And last night. Did you enjoy the birthday celebration? Damien frowned. Before he could speak, a woman in a red dress, with Damien's coat draped over her shoulders, walked in. Ivy's face grew more somber. Ivy, I'm sorry, Damien was with me last night. My mother fell ill a few days ago, and Damien was afraid I couldn't handle it alone, so he stayed to help take care of her. It's all my fault, I shouldn't have troubled him. Ivy listened to Rachel Shaw's words, and a wave of bitterness surged in her heart. Is your mother seriously ill? No, it was just a minor cold with a bit of a fever, she's almost fully recovered now. Ivy's heart felt like it was hit hard, she struggled to control her emotions, but her red-rimmed eyes and trembling lips betrayed her. Damien's frown deepened. He was in a meeting when he heard about Ivy's mother's passing. After the meeting and when he was planning to go to see her, a problem arose with Rachel Shaw again. With so many things happening, he forgot about Ivy's matters. Nonetheless, he felt very sorry. Damien wanted to go and light incense for Ivy's mother, but Ivy blocked him. No need, her mother is more important, go accompany her and her mother. Damien's steps halted. Ivy didn't want to stay here anymore, she stood up to leave. She didn't cry, Ivy wouldn't allow herself to shed tears for someone who wasn't worth it. Damien watched as Ivy, now 7 months pregnant, struggled even to walk. Suddenly, he felt a trace of pain in his heart. Rachel only worried and sobbed over her mother's illness, calling him, but Ivy managed through her mother's death all alone with no one to help her. Where are you going? You shouldn't be running around when you're pregnant. Damien tried to stop Ivy. Ivy smiled bitterly. So, he remembered she was pregnant. Leaving his pregnant wife behind to take care of someone else's mother showed he didn't care about her or the child at all. A child that wasn't wanted wouldn't be happy. Ivy looked down at her belly. In pain, she seemed to reach a decision. She walked faster and got directly into the elevator. Damien felt a blockage in his chest and moved to follow her. Rachel Shaw stopped him. Damien, Ivy is grieving for her mother, maybe you should let her calm down on her own. Damien glanced coldly at Rachel, pushed her hand away, and said in a deep, cold voice, she's in a bad state, something might happen, you go home first. When Damien left, Ivy was already nowhere to be seen. Watching the busy street with cars coming and going, Damien took out his phone and made a call. Track Ivy's phone, find her immediately. For once, there was a hint of unease on Damien's handsome face. 1 hour later, his assistant called him. Sir, Mrs. Lancaster is at the hospital now. Why did she go to the hospital? For an abortion, and also, Mrs. Lancaster has asked her lawyer to draft a divorce agreement. She has already signed it. A buzzing sound filled his ears. Damien's deep eyes were filled with disbelief. Iridor's top auction house. The spacious hall was filled with high society figures. On the auction stage, the auctioneer wore a white cheongsam, her hair elegantly styled, a thin veil covering her face, making her features unclear, yet her every movement was stunningly beautiful. With confident ease, she introduced the item on display in flawless English, prompting a bidding frenzy below. A pair of clear, bright eyes swept over the audience, hands holding a gavel, commanding the entire room. On the second floor, Damien Lancaster sat there, turning his head to glance. Is she the one Grandpa insisted on meeting? The assistant next to him handed over some information. Yes, her name is Zinnia, and she became an auctioneer here 5 years ago. Her first auction saw a landscape painting with a starting price of 1 million sell for a staggering 60 million, a 60-fold profit, making her famous with one stroke. Damien Lancaster narrowed his eyes. Does she always appear with a veil? Novel drama. The assistant thought for a moment, then said, yes, I heard someone once offered 10 million to have her remove it, but she refused, and it's said she must be incredibly ugly, which is why she doesn't want to reveal her face. Damien Lancaster snuffed out his cigarette and quietly watched. Her eyes are beautiful. With such beautiful eyes, she couldn't possibly be shockingly ugly. Moreover, those eyes resemble someone. Who do they resemble? Like Ivy Summers, the woman who, 5 years ago, left behind a divorce agreement, silently aborted his child, and vanished without a trace. Bring her to see me. Damien Lancaster stood up, took 2 steps, then stopped. It's been 5 years, and there's still no trace of Ivy Summers. The assistant was in a panic. They say people can't just vanish. But their lady really vanished into thin air, with no trace for 5 years. Damien Lancaster had a headache. Keep looking. That woman was ruthless enough, divorcing him, aborting his child, and blocking every way to contact her. No one would guess that the president of the mighty Lancaster Group was the one left by a divorce agreement, or that he has spent 5 years searching for the woman who abandoned him. Damien Lancaster must find her. He needs to ask her what heinous crime he committed that made her leave so mercilessly. Damien Lancaster left. Assistant Julian Jacob stood there, cold sweat dripping, having searched everywhere to no avail. After 5 years, finding a person felt like searching for a needle in a haystack. Julian Jacobs muttered bitterly to himself, "Ma'am, where in the world are you?" As an auction concluded, Zinnia elegantly bowed slightly and then turned to leave the stage. 5 years ago, Ivy Summers came to Iridor and joined an auction house, renaming herself Zinnia to avoid unnecessary trouble, always wearing a veil at the auction house. Arriving at the office, a soft little pink bundle toddled over, opening her little arms to hug Ivy Summers' leg, and called out crisply, "Mommy." Ivy Summers removed her veil, revealing a delicate and stunning face. She bent down to pick up her daughter and kissed her pale, tender face. "Sophie, have you been waiting long? Where are your brothers?" The little pink bundle balled her little hand, raising her head. "HMPH, the brothers went out to play." "Didn't they take Sophie?" "They said they were going to play boys' games and couldn't bring Sophie." Ivy Summers, "Those 2 boys didn't want to take Sophie, just say it outright." Back then, when Ivy Summers was heartbroken and intended to abort the child, standing at the operating room door made her reluctant, and eventually, she gave up. 2 months after arriving in Iridor, she gave birth to 3 babies, 2 boys and 1 girl. The eldest is Nathan Summers, the middle is Leo Summers, and the youngest is Sophie Summers. The eldest is sensible, the second is mischievous, and the youngest is the cutest. Ivy Summers looked at the adorable little dumpling in her arms, feeling grateful for the decision made back then. "Oh, Guess who Sophie and the brothers saw today? Who? The bad daddy, Sophie said loudly, but Ivy Summers didn't hear it clearly. Who did Sophie say she saw? Sophie and the brothers saw the bad daddy, the one who appears on TV, called Damian Lancaster, the really fierce and mean one, Sophie said, and even raised her little hand to make gestures to Ivy Summers. Listening to Sophie, Ivy Summers's heart tightened. For these years, she seldom heard Damian Lancaster's name. At times, Ivy Summers almost forgot this person existed. Yet, when his name came from Sophie's mouth, past memories surged, and Ivy Summers's heart ached. But why would Damian Lancaster be here? Her children only knew their father as Damian Lancaster, having seen him on TV a few times, and probably mistook someone else for him. Sophie must have been mistaken. He wouldn't come here. But, knock knock, 2 knocks interrupted Sophie. Who is it? Zinnia, are you busy? The manager wants you to come immediately. A distinguished guest specifically requested you, and the manager wants you to come quickly. A distinguished guest? There are many distinguished guests at their auction house, but not many could make the manager so anxious. Ivy Summers became a little curious about how distinguished this guest could be. I'm not busy, I'll head over right away. But Sophie really saw the bad daddy. Sophie furrowed her little brows, speaking softly, as Ivy Summers looked at her. Sophie blinked her big watery eyes, somewhat disappointedly asking, is Mommy going to work again? Ivy Summers placed Sophie on the sofa, apologizing, darling Sophie, just wait a bit longer, Mommy will be back soon, okay? Though she wanted Mommy to accompany her, she knew not to delay Mommy's work. Sophie was very understanding. Okay, Sophie will wait for Mommy. Ivy Summers kissed her daughter's cheek again, giving her some bread. Sophie, eat some bread. Mom will take you and your brothers for a big meal later, okay? Okay. Ivy Summers smiled softly, put on her veil, and left. Sophie, holding onto the bread with both hands, ran to the door, peeking outside. Mommy is gone again, so boring. Sophie put down the bread, tapped on her smartwatch, and asked sweetly, brothers, where are you? Sophie is coming to find you. Soon Sophie received a reply, a location plus, in the underground parking lot. In the underground parking lot, the 2 little boys stood in front of a black Maybach. Nathan Summers crossed his little arms, looking complicated while staring at Leo Summers beside him. Are you sure this car belongs to the scumbag daddy? Leo Summers was busily drawing on the car with a paintbrush. Mission accomplished. No mistake, I saw him get out of this car. Nathan Summers looked at the childish scrawled words on the car and silently read, unfaithful bastard. Nathan Summers slapped his forehead, looking at Leo Summers helplessly. Mom usually tells you to read more books and play less on the computer. Did you secretly play on the computer again? Your handwriting blows. Brother, don't bother with these details. Leo Summers chuckled, and after writing, he drew a very abstract pig beside it. HMPH, lousy dad. Let everyone know you're a complete jerk. Over the years, although they hadn't met their lousy dad, they had heard his name and had seen him on TV happily attending events with other women. So the first time they saw Damian Lancaster here, they immediately recognized him, no doubt about it. Ivy Summers didn't want to talk about Damian with the kids. Most of what they knew was told to them by Ivy's friend, Ella Morgan. So the kids understood why Mom brought them here to live alone, because Bad Daddy did something that hurt Mommy. He didn't deserve to be Mommy's husband, nor their dad. Brother, second brother, what are you doing? Sophie ran over. Shush. Leo Summers immediately covered Sophie's mouth. Sophie, keep it down, we're up to something bad. Sophie immediately covered her own mouth and nodded, promising not to make any sound. Then, she saw the words written on the car with colored pencils. Second brother, you wrote the wrong words. Leo Summers awkwardly waved his little hand. Don't worry about those details. Nathan Summers pulled Sophie's hand and asked, Sophie, hasn't Mommy gotten off work yet? Mommy was called to the office by Uncle Manager. At this moment, in the manager's office, when Ivy Summers walked in, the manager looked at her, immediately beckoned her over, and introduced, Zinnia, come here, this is Mrs. Lancaster. Mrs. Lancaster, this is the auctioneer Zinnia you're looking for. Mrs. Lancaster. Ivy Summers raised her eyes and glanced over, her brow slightly furrowed. It was her, Rachel Shaw, the woman Damian Lancaster deeply loved back then. Mrs. Lancaster. It makes sense. Damian loved her, and after he divorced, he couldn't wait to marry Rachel Shaw. Unbelievable, back then she made it possible for Damien and her, came to Iridor alone, and now they coincidentally meet. Ivy Summers felt a block in her chest, her face turned a bit colder. Rachel Shaw, exquisitely dressed, put down her coffee and glanced at Ivy, who was wearing a veil, with seeming disdain. The chief auctioneer can appraise antiques. Once famous with a single auction, the internet made her out to be legendary, thinking she was some expert, but in the end, she doesn't even dare to show her true face. She couldn't understand why old Master Lancaster insisted on meeting her. Rachel Shaw snorted, "Are you Zinnia? I heard you're not only an auctioneer but can also appraise antiques. We'd like to hire you for a few days to come with us to Ethelgard to the Lancaster family to look at some antiques, you name your price." Rachel Shaw confidently believed no one could refuse the phrase, "name your price," especially since no one should be unaware of the Lancaster name and naturally wouldn't dare refuse. She leisurely took a sip of her coffee, waiting for Ivy Summers to flatter her. A chill swept across Ivy's heart. She could appraise antiques, but they would never be able to hire her. Ivy left in the first place because she never wanted to see them again, so how could she possibly agree to go back to Ethelgard with them? "Sorry, my profession is auctioneer. If you need an antique appraisal, you can find someone else." "I can't do it, manager, I have something else to attend to." With that, Ivy Summers was about to leave. Rachel Shaw was taken aback. She actually refused. "Wait, do you know who I am? You might want to think clearly before you answer." "I'm very clear. I refuse." "What attitude is that? I'm paying you to come back. What makes you unwilling?" Rachel Shaw stood up and grabbed Ivy Summers. To please old Master Lancaster, Rachel was determined to bring her back. Ivy Summers furrowed her brows tightly, her gaze fell on the hand that Rachel tightly held onto her. At this moment, her pupils shrank. On Rachel's wrist was a fully green jade bracelet, with an even color and excellent translucency, a top-grade piece of jade worth over 100 million. And she recognized it at once. This jade bracelet was the family heirloom from her family. It was given to her by her mother, who had told her to take good care of it as it might come in handy someday. But because she left in a hurry back then, the bracelet had been left at the Lancaster house, and now it ended up in Rachel's hands. Damien Lancaster gave it to her. On what grounds did he give her things to Rachel Shaw? Ivy Summers reversed her grip on Rachel's hand. "Is this jade bracelet yours?" Rachel Shaw glared at Ivy unpleasantly. "Of course it's mine. It was given to me by my husband. If it's not mine, could it be yours?" So it was indeed given by Damien Lancaster. A sharp pain pierced her heart. Damien knew it was hers, yet he still gave it to Rachel Shaw. What a complete bastard, giving the family heirloom of a former wife to a current wife. Isn't he disgusted? "Let go." At that moment, a cold and imposing voice sounded. Ivy Summers raised her head. The man had somehow appeared at the door, and her gaze unexpectedly met his deep, profound eyes. Novel drama. The man had an impressive physique, stood tall and straight, his features strikingly handsome. Just standing there, the powerful presence accumulated over years of authority was hard to conceal. Ivy Summers' fingers tightened. Damien Lancaster. It was actually Damien Lancaster. Sophie hadn't been mistaken when she mentioned seeing Damien Lancaster. Ivy Summers should have thought that these two loved each other so much. If Rachel Shaw was here, Damien Lancaster might also be. Ivy Summers hadn't anticipated seeing Damien Lancaster again in these 5 years. She didn't want to see him again because she was afraid. She had given birth to 3 children. If Damien discovered them, he would surely take them away. Because a family like the Lancasters would never allow their family bloodline to be left outside. And these 3 children had become Ivy Summers' life. She wouldn't allow even the slightest chance of being separated from them. This was also why Ivy Summers had worn a veil and remained extremely cautious all these years. Ivy Summers clenched her hand, and the man's gaze fell on her as if trying to see through the thin veil to her face. Her heart rate kept accelerating. Rachel Shaw flung Ivy's hand away. Her entire demeanor changed. "Damien, I spoke with Miss Zinnia, but Miss Zinnia refuses to come back with us. She seems to look down on us. Disdaining the Lancaster family, she must have a death wish." Rachel Shaw raised her head proudly. Damien Lancaster focused his gaze on Ivy Summers. "Name your price." Away by Damien Lancaster, Ivy Summers took a deep breath. She was afraid of being recognized and didn't want to linger. Going to Ethelgard was out of the question. "I'm priceless." After saying that, Ivy Summers turned sideways and walked out past Damien Lancaster. Damien didn't stop her. but his gaze remained fixed on her. The woman had a faint scent about her, not the usual perfume. It was familiar, but he couldn't place where he had smelled it before. Moreover, she had a unique aura, very much like the old Ivy Summers. Ivy appeared gentle, but there was always a resilience about her. Independent in her actions, decisive. Enough. When she decides to leave, she leaves. No chance given, no room left. Again, he thought of Ivy Summers. Damien furrowed his brow. For the past 5 years, he had often thought of Ivy Summers, about her being 7 months pregnant back then, and the child. If she hadn't aborted the child would be 5 by now. Back then, he didn't have much affection for Ivy, but he never considered divorce. He had also looked forward to the child. Thinking about it, Damien's aura darkened. Damien, this auctioneer has quite a temper. How about we find someone else for Grandpa? There are plenty of people who understand antiques out there. Damien furrowed his brow. There are plenty of people who understand antiques, but Grandpa specifically wants her. Julian, look into her, I want all her information. Damien, why investigate her? Are you interested in her? Rachel Shaw tentatively asked Damien. After that bitch Ivy went missing, she had stayed by Damien's side, but he never mentioned marrying her, which worried Rachel Shaw. Fortunately, Damien was cold-hearted, not interested in other women at all. But today, Damien's gaze at that auctioneer sparked a sense of crisis in Rachel. Not interested, but since Grandpa wants to see her, it's better to be thorough. Rachel Shaw felt relieved hearing Damien say this. Damien was investigating her only because of the old man. After all, an ugly duckling who doesn't dare show her true face, Damien couldn't possibly like her. Let's head back to the hotel first. Damien turned and strode away. Ivy Summers clutched her wildly beating heart as she returned to the office. Damien wanted her to come back to look at antiques. In their 3 years of marriage, Ivy knew how dominant Damien could be. He would probably come again. She showed herself in front of him today, unsure if he recognized her or if he would investigate her. Everything about her child, couldn't be discovered by Damien. Ivy picked up her phone and dialed a number. Soon, a male's deep, lazy voice came through the line. Darling, what's up? Do me a favor, someone might be investigating me, I can't let him find out. With Ivy's skills, she couldn't stop Damien from investigating, but the man on the other end could. Okay. With a simple, okay, Ivy knew he would do it. The third time. What? Ivy didn't understand what he meant by this slow third time. This is the third time I've helped you in the 5 years I've known you, darling. Once you reach 5 times, how about marrying me? The man on the other end casually leaned against the couch, his tall and solid body wrapped in a half-open robe, revealing perfect abs. He lazily curved his lips, appearing more seductive than any demon. Ivy shivered. Marry a devil. He might be more terrifying than Damien. No way. You help me, I earn money for you, we owe each other nothing. I'd rather have you manage my money than earn it. Better find a gentle, virtuous person to manage your wealth. I'd just take it and run. Heartless. Ivy hung up the phone, typed a message to her manager, requesting 2 days off, took a deep breath, and opened the office door. Sophie, Mommy's finished working. Let's go, Sophie. Ivy looked inside, but there was no sign of Sophie. Meanwhile, in the underground parking lot, 2 little ones peeked out from behind a wall. Nathan Summers sighed, silently opened his laptop to clean up after Leo Summers. Leo had drawn on Damien's car. Once the surveillance cameras were checked, they'd be in big trouble. Nathan quickly hacked into the surveillance system to delete the footage, finally breathing a sigh of relief. Up ahead, Leo led Sophie, cheerfully waiting to see Damien's reaction to his masterpiece. Who did this? A group of people came over, led by none other than Damien. Julian looked at the big words on the car in shock, instinctively reading them out loud. Unfaithful scoundrel, big cheat. This, sir. Julian looked at Damien in fear and trepidation. Who was it? Did they have a death wish? Who did this? This is too brazen. Rachel Shaw also frowned. Damien looked with a somber face. 7 words, 1 wasn't written, and 2 were wrong, obviously done by a child. Sir, I'll check the surveillance immediately. He. Faint laughter was heard. Damien's sharp eyes surveyed the surroundings, immediately noticing 2 little heads sneaking out behind a wall. Leo Summers reacted quickly. We've been found, Sophie, run. What? Sophie was so startled she jumped, and when she turned around, Her two brothers had already run far. Brothers, wait for Sophie. Sophie was about to chase after them when her cake dress got caught on something. She couldn't run a step and fell to the ground with a thud. The people behind had caught up, she couldn't escape. Sophie lay on the ground, covering her face with her hands. If she couldn't see, they couldn't see her. Damien strode over, silently looked at the little bundle on the ground for a moment, then picked her right up. The little one covered her face, eyes shut tight, as if that made her invisible to him. A classic case of self-deception. I see you, don't cover up. Thinking she was well hidden, Sophie opened her eyes, her big eyes full of confusion. What's going on? Whenever she played hide and seek with her brothers, she was always the best hider. Sophie put her hands down and, being held aloft, wiggled her little arms and legs, finding she couldn't get down. Sophie blinked her big eyes at Damien. For the first time seeing her own dad up close, Sophie blinked again, noticing how much two of her brothers resembled him. Thankfully, Sophie took after mommy, not daddy, this ugly man. Sophie pondered this, unconsciously raising her little chin, making small facial expressions. Damien studied Sophie, recognizing the richness of her inner world. Whose little child are you, and why did you draw on my car? Novel drama. Damien's voice was cold and heavy, devoid of warmth. Sophie wasn't afraid of him, just kept her little mouth tightly shut. Mommy said not to talk to bad people. Daddy was the bad person, who would take Sophie away and stop her from seeing mommy. If you don't speak, I'll hand you over to the police, and then they'll find your daddy. Sophie blinked her eyes. Stupid daddy, don't look for yourself. Damien assumed this little one would fear the police, but she didn't seem scared. When a child does something bad, the parents will be punished. Soon, we'll arrest your daddy. Go ahead. Sophie was in full support. Fearless, Damien saw this little one was unyielding. We'll arrest your mommy. Why arrest Sophie's mommy? Just arrest Sophie's daddy, don't arrest mommy. Sophie was anxious, hands on her hips, cutely fierce. Damien chuckled twice. Can't arrest a mommy, but arresting a daddy is okay, it seems. This kid's father must be pretty unsuccessful. Your name is Sophie. Why did you draw on my car? Who was with you just now? Sophie folded her arms, tilted her head, and pouted. I'm not going to tell you my name is Sophie. I did it all by myself, there wasn't anyone else. Pretty loyal, and a bit silly too. Since you won't reveal your partner, then tell me who your mom is. I don't want to tell you. Then I can only take you back with me. Hearing that she was about to be taken away, Sophie's big eyes blinked, as if she would start crying any second. Damien Lancaster put her on the ground. Sophie held back her tears, and without hesitation, turned around immediately, trying her hardest to run with her tiny legs, waving her little arms. She kept muttering to herself, run run, Sophie run. Damien raised an eyebrow, watching the little dumpling, not catching her right away. It wasn't until Sophie thought she had escaped successfully that he quickly took 2 steps to catch her again. Sophie was lifted into the air, kicking her tiny legs furiously, realizing it was all in vain. Keep running. Sophie tucked her little hands into her sides, angrily drooping her head like an upset little pufferfish. Damien smirked, surprisingly finding the little girl somewhat cute. He carried her to the car, seeing those ugly words again. Tell me, why did you write these words? Abandoning wife and children. Doesn't seem like something a child her age would understand. Sophie clamped her mouth shut, unwilling to say a word. Damien, what's with this kid? Rachel Shaw frowned. She admitted she did it, but won't say anything else. Julian Jacobs, call the police. Yes, sir, what about the child? Damien glanced around, seeing no one nearby. The kid looked about 4 or 5 years old, couldn't just leave her here alone. Damien opened the car door, placed the little girl inside, wait for the police to contact her parents to pick her up. Sophie instantly felt like the sky was falling. Mommy was right, Daddy would take Sophie away. Sophie was about to never see Mommy again. Tears rolled down in large drops. When Damien got into the car, he realized the brave little girl who had taken responsibility alone was now crying. He wasn't good with kids and hated when they cried in front of him, but looking at the pitiful little face in front of him, his hard heart softened a bit. Why are you crying? I didn't hit you. Sophie wiped her eyes with her chubby hands. Sophie was caught by a bad guy. Sophie will never see Mommy again. Sophie. Sophie. Really heartbreaking. The little girl cried until she couldn't speak anymore. Damien watched quietly for a while, then said, "I'll let you go back when your mom contacts me." "Really?" Sophie instantly stopped crying, her bright eyes shining as she looked at him. Damien almost suspected she was faking it. "Yes, but you have to tell me why you drew on my car." Sophie pursed her lips tight, her big eyes looking at Damien as if saying, "You won't get a word out of me." Even someone as influential as Damien in the business world couldn't do anything about a crying little girl. Watching Sophie get taken away, the two little ones who had fled first panicked. Leo Summers wanted to run out to save Sophie, but Nathan Summers stopped him, calmly saying, "We look a bit like the bad daddy, rushing out won't save Sophie, it'll just cause trouble for mommy." "Then what about Sophie? Let's find mommy first." Leo shivered all over, clenched his little butt, and covered it with his hands, feeling like his bum was about to explode. The phone rang, it was Ivy Summers calling. Ivy was almost frantic, unable to find the three of them. Oh no, it's mommy calling." Leo scratched his head anxiously. "Answer it." Nathan had already picked up. Ivy's voice came through, "Nathan, Leo, where did you go? Is your sister with you?" Sophie. Leo anxiously couldn't speak. "Mommy." Sophie was taken away by Damien Lancaster. Nathan calmly explained the situation to Ivy. After hearing it, Ivy suspected there was something wrong with her ears. It took a full 10 seconds for Ivy to react. The sky had fallen. "You guys, this." "Sophie, Ivy was so anxious she couldn't find the words. Finally, she could only ask, "Did he recognize you?" Nathan. "No." Luckily, the sky had only fallen a bit. Ivy Summers took a deep breath, struggling to stay calm. "You guys come back first, mommy will figure something out." "Okay." Just after hanging up, Ivy Summers received a call from an unknown number. Ivy Summers had a bad feeling. Her hand trembled a little as she answered the call. A cold voice from the other side asked, "Are you the child's mother?" "I am. Your daughter is with me." Ivy Summers instantly recognized it was Damien Lancaster's voice, her heart chilled. "What do you want?" "The Regent Hotel, come pick her up." Ivy Summers heard Sophie's crying from the other end and panicked. "I understand the situation, let's talk it out. I'll compensate whatever's necessary, just don't hurt my child." Damien Lancaster furrowed his brows. The woman's voice sounded familiar to him. As he pondered, the little girl beside him cried louder. Her emotions were intense, sometimes crying, then stopping, and after a brief pause, she'd remember something sad and cry again. Damien Lancaster pinched the bridge of his nose. "I have no interest in harming a child, but you need to come and explain this matter clearly." He didn't believe a child would know what abandonment meant, it must have been learned from an adult. He needed to figure out what was going on. After speaking, Damien Lancaster hung up the phone. Listening to Sophie's cries, Ivy Summers felt her heart breaking and immediately wanted to head to the hotel Damien Lancaster mentioned. After taking 2 steps, she stopped. No, she had already met Damien Lancaster once at the auction. Meeting again would increase the chances of him recognizing her as Ivy Summers. If he realized she was Ivy Summers, he would immediately know Sophie was his daughter. Unacceptable. Absolutely not. Ivy Summers paced around twice holding her phone, then called her best friend, Ella Morgan. Half an hour later, Ivy Summers drove to the Regent Hotel with Ella Morgan, Nathan, and Leo. On the way, Ivy Summers had already explained everything to Ella Morgan. And Ivy Summers needed Ella Morgan to go and bring Sophie out. "Ivy, are you sure this will work?" "I'm sure." Ivy Summers held Ella Morgan's hand. "Ella, I'm entrusting Sophie to you." Ella Morgan looked at the worried gaze of Ivy Summers, reassuringly patting her chest. "Don't worry, I'll definitely bring Sophie back." Ella Morgan got out of the car and walked into the hotel with a determined stance. Ivy Summers could only wait outside with Nathan and Leo, praying everything would go smoothly. Wah. Sophie sat on the sofa, covering her face with her chubby little hands, crying sadly. Damien Lancaster sat beside her, frowning as he watched. Julian Jacobs had run to several places and bought a bunch of candy. "Sir." Damien Lancaster glanced at the pile of candy. "This is your solution?" Julian Jacobs smirked slightly. "Kids love candy, sir, you should try comforting her." "Me? Well, you brought the little girl back yourself, who else should comfort her?" Damien Lancaster looked at the endlessly crying Sophie, reluctantly stood up, and directly picked her up into his arms. Sophie was light, and Damien Lancaster could hold her easily with one arm. Sophie's little bottom sat on his forearm, looking at his gloomy face with red eyes. Haven't your parents taught you that crying won't solve anything? Sophie sobbed. Will you let Sophie go if she stops crying? Novel drama. No. Sophie pouted, and tears streamed down her face. Watching her pitiful appearance, Damien Lancaster's hard heart softened a little, and he picked up some candy to coax her. Want some? Sophie glanced. A lollipop. Not interested. Not seeing mommy couldn't be soothed by a single lollipop. Sophie pouted. Her tears didn't stop. Damien Lancaster raised an eyebrow. How about 2? 3. Let's negotiate. 5. All for you. Sophie stopped crying and opened her small hands. Damien Lancaster. Ella Morgan was brought upstairs by the waiter arranged by Damien Lancaster. She was a bit nervous at the door. After all, the person she had to face was Damien Lancaster. Novel drama. The waiter pressed the doorbell, the door was opened, and the waiter gestured for Ella to enter. Ella took a deep breath, encouraged herself silently, and walked in. Julian Jacobs brought her in front of Damien Lancaster. Sir. Damien lifted his gaze, his eyes falling on Ella Morgan. Ella anxiously searched for Sophie around, fearing Sophie was suffering in Damien's hands. Instead, she saw the little girl sitting on the sofa, enjoying an assortment of lollipops with different flavors. Ella was astonished, thinking, my dear, your mom is worried sick outside, and you're here enjoying candy. Ella didn't have time to think more, quickly walking over. Sophie, mommy's here. Sophie looked up, about to happily call out, Godmother, when Ella quickly gave her a look. Sophie blinked, not understanding why her godmother was calling herself mommy, but cleverly cooperated. Mommy, you finally came. Ella immediately picked Sophie up. Damien's eyes were on them. Are you the child's mother? Under Damien's gaze, Ella's heart pounded nervously. She feigned calmness and said, yes, I'm the child's mother. I understand the situation now. Whatever losses you have, I will compensate fully. Damien squinted his eyes, as if they were penetrating her body, seeing her heart pounding wildly with tension. The person who called me earlier wasn't you. The voice was different. Ella couldn't show weakness, otherwise, it would be discovered. Sir, I was the one who called you earlier. Are you sure I'm not the child's mother? Damien didn't speak, observing her carefully. If you don't believe me, you can try calling the earlier number again. Sophie clung to Ella's neck, asking, Mommy, can we leave now? Sophie, wait a little longer. Mommy will leave with you after talking with this uncle. The child called Ella, Mommy, so Damien naturally couldn't doubt her. Still, Damien was cautious. Then why did your child write, someone else, on my car? Do we know each other? Ella sighed. Sorry, my child mistakenly identified the car. Mistakenly identified the car? Yes, she replied, taking a deep breath. Actually, the child's father wasn't around much, and sometimes the child got confused. The clothes you're wearing today reminded the child of him, so there was a mix-up. Damien nodded slightly. Ella's explanation made sense, and there was nothing more for him to question. But when Damien looked at the child, he felt an unexpected warmth and connection. Just as he was about to continue, Julian brought some documents over. Sir, we found the person you wanted to check. It was Zinnia's information. Have you finished your questions? I need to leave with the child soon. I'll settle everything properly, Ella said politely. Damien said nothing further, took the documents Julian handed over, and told him, you handle this. Yes, sir. Damien took the material and went to the study. Outside in the car, Ivy was anxiously waiting, not knowing what was happening inside. Over 20 minutes had passed, yet Ella hadn't come out with Sophie. Damien wasn't easy to deal with. She feared Ella couldn't handle it. Nathan, Leo, do you have any way to see what's happening inside? The two children often played with computers, and hacking into surveillance was Nathan's specialty. Nathan was focused on the computer, realizing the hotel rooms likely didn't have surveillance, hence they couldn't see what was happening inside. But they could see the hotel's corridor surveillance. Nathan brought up the hotel's surveillance. Godmother went inside and hasn't come out yet. Ivy grew even more anxious. After a while, Ella hurriedly came out carrying Sophie. Leo, Mommy, it's Godmother and Sophie. Ivy looked up and finally relaxed when she saw Sophie. Ivy opened the car door, and Ella immediately got in with Sophie. Sophie, Mommy. Sophie immediately snuggled into Ivy's arms. Ella took a deep breath. That was so risky. What happened? Drive first, I'll explain slowly to you. Okay. Ivy placed Sophie in the back and started the car. Inside the hotel, Damien looked at the material he got, and the name on the file was prominently written. Zinnia, years old, married, employed at the auction house for 5 years. Julian, having just finished dealing with the car issue, was immediately called into the study. Sir, what's the matter? This information is no different from the first batch you showed me. Julian looked troubled. It wasn't that he didn't want to investigate further, it's just that this was all he could find. Besides these, Julian didn't know what else could be investigated. This is all I found about Miss Zinnia, and the rest is just her auction experiences over the past few years. Sir, isn't this what you wanted? Faced with this question, Damon Lancaster frowned. The information was comprehensive, but the results were not to his satisfaction. He always felt that Zinnia resembled Ivy Summers. Zinnia, Ivy Summers, even their names were similar. But the results had nothing to do with Ivy Summers. Was he overthinking it? Something felt off. Despite there being plenty of people knowledgeable about antiques in Ethelgard, the old master insisted on having him come to Iridor to bring this woman back. The old master had his reasons. Damien Lancaster frowned, picked up his phone, walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, and watched a car quickly drive away downstairs as he dialed old Master Lancaster's number. The call was connected. In a deep voice, Damien asked, "Grandfather, who exactly is the auctioneer? Did you see her?" "Yes." The old master was silent for a few seconds, then sighed. "It seems that for those 3 years, you really didn't pay enough attention, or you wouldn't have failed to recognize your wife standing right in front of you." Damien's brow tightened. Ivy Summers. Employed for 5 years, face veiled in white, unwilling to reveal her true identity, giving him a familiar feeling. Zinnia. Ivy Summers. Damien's expression grew increasingly cold. Zinnia is Ivy Summers. His intuition wasn't wrong. That's also why the old master insisted he bring her back. Damien dangerously narrowed his eyes. It explained why he couldn't find the woman for 5 years. She had changed her name and hidden here. She recognized him at the auction house meeting, which was why she left so decisively. His face turned cold. A surge of frustration welled up in Damien's chest. She hid well indeed. "Damien, bring Ivy back." "All right." Damien hung up the phone and strode out. Julian had no idea what had happened. He just felt that the aura around Damien suddenly became intense and serious. This intense aura had only appeared 5 years ago when Damien discovered personal matters involving Ivy and realized misunderstandings had occurred. Rachel Shaw had just reached Damien's room door when she saw him coming out. She was about to call out to him, but Damien had no time to pay attention. Rachel quickly grabbed Julian. "Where are you guys going?" "Miss Shaw, I'm not quite sure either." Julian hurried to catch up. Rachel frowned. It had been a long time since she'd seen Damien in such a hurry. What on earth had happened? Damien got into the car and called the auction house's manager. "President Lancaster, is Zinnia at the auction house?" "Zinnia took a leave, President Lancaster. If you want someone to look at antiques." Damien didn't let the manager finish before hanging up. "Leave of absence, was she hiding to avoid being found out?" "Sir, where are we going?" Sitting in the passenger seat, Julian asked. "Immediately send someone to investigate Zinnia's residence." Seeing Damien was serious, Julian didn't dare to ask more and quickly followed his instructions. Damien didn't believe she could avoid him this time. Ivy Summers, along with Ella Morgan and the 3 children, went to a restaurant before heading home, and during the meal, Ella carefully recounted the entire incident at the hotel. Damien didn't demand compensation. After asking some questions, he had his assistant see them out. The questions Damien asked clearly showed he had suspicions about Ella's identity. Although there was no real danger, Ivy Summers was still afraid that Damien might figure something out if he thought about it carefully. While thinking about this, Ivy received a call from her manager. "Zinnia, did President Lancaster contact you?" "President Lancaster?" Ivy frowned. "He didn't contact me." "Why?" "He called to ask if you were at the auction house. I told him you weren't, and he seemed quite upset. He's likely looking for you." Novel drama. Damien is looking for her. Alarm bells instantly rang in Ivy's mind. It's over. He must have discovered something. Otherwise, why would he be looking for her? Did he say anything else? No. Once he heard you weren't there, he angrily hung up. Ivy, he's a big shot, don't easily offend him. I understand. Ivy hung up. Seeing her pale face, Ella asked, what happened? Ella, take them to your house first, and help me book a few plane tickets, anywhere will do, I need to go home and grab the documents. Huh, you're leaving. Ivy had no time to explain. Damien probably discovered my true identity, and he's looking for me. Ella's pupils contracted. What should we do? What about the kids? He probably doesn't know about the kids yet. With that person's help, the fact that she had children would be kept hidden, and Damien wouldn't be able to find out for the time being. There's no time to explain more now. Nathan, Leo, Sophie, follow Godmother first. Mommy will meet up with you later. Ivy wasn't afraid of meeting Damien. She was afraid that when Damien found her, he'd trace her to the 3 kids. Damien had the capability to do so, she was well aware. And Ivy couldn't let him discover the kids or take them away. Seeing Ivy's urgency, the 3 little ones sensibly followed Ella. Mommy, be careful. All right, Mommy knows. Ivy drove quickly back to her duplex apartment, not even bothering to turn on the lights, and went straight upstairs to her room to grab the documents and leave. But as soon as she reached the bottom of the stairs, Ivy froze. In the darkness, a small flame flickered. The faint scent of cigarette smoke wafted over. Ivy's heart skipped a beat. Running away, the deep voice came slowly. Ivy knew that voice. In the moonlight coming in from outside, Ivy saw the man sitting on the sofa. In her rush to enter, she hadn't noticed him. Her mind went blank for a moment. Click. The room. Lights came on. The sudden brightness made Ivy instinctively close her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them again, she saw Damien Lancaster sitting dominantly on the sofa, a cigarette between his long fingers, slowly exhaling smoke, his deep black eyes fixed on her. Ivy's body went rigid. Indeed, he'd really found her. Not only did he find her, but he also came to her home. Ivy struggled to control her emotions, not letting him see her anxiety. The downstairs comprised the living room and kitchen, the upstairs held the bedrooms, and Ivy didn't know if Damien had gone upstairs. If he had, the secret of the 3 kids couldn't be hidden. 5 years gone. Should I call you Ivy Summers or Zinnia now? Ivy Summers bit her lip and took a deep breath, asking, Mr. Lancaster, do you understand the law? Do you know that trespassing is illegal? Damien Lancaster didn't seem to care. He stood up, his tall figure exuding a sense of oppression. He took a decisive step forward, and Ivy instinctively backed away, maintaining her distance. At this moment, the aura emanating from Damien was filled with danger. Ivy instinctively wanted to escape, but he quickly moved to block her path, a powerful barrier. He firmly held her wrists, pressing them lightly against the wall. Ivy raised her head to stare at Damien, a surge of anger in her eyes. What do you want to do? Damien stared at her as well. This face had changed from 5 years ago, with more refined and beautiful features. Back then, Ivy didn't like to wear makeup. Now, with a light touch of makeup, she was even more impeccably beautiful. Everything was wonderful, except that the eyes which once were filled with him now had no trace of him, only coldness and anger. Such a gaze pierced Damien deeply. He didn't like to see Ivy with such eyes. Why run, leaving without a word 5 years ago? Don't you have anything to explain? Ivy stared defiantly at him. Don't you know why I left without a word? You liked Rachel Shaw. I initiated the divorce to make way for you two. What? Wasn't what I did satisfactory enough for you, President Lancaster? Damien furrowed his brow tightly, his eyes dark and somber. Ivy Summers, which ear of yours heard me say that I liked Rachel Shaw? Don't like Rachel Shaw, then who do you like? Me, Ivy questioned loudly. How ridiculous. He never explicitly said he liked Rachel Shaw. But the whole world knew it. The whole world knew Damien Lancaster deeply loved Rachel Shaw, reserving venues and setting off splendid fireworks for her birthday. She also knew he liked Rachel Shaw, cherished her as a treasure, always attentive to her, keeping her by his side, accompanying her every day. Moreover, weren't they married? Rachel Shaw is now Mrs. Lancaster, and he's given her the family heirlooms to please Rachel Shaw. Yet he now tells her he never said he liked Rachel Shaw. Doesn't he know that some things don't need to be said out loud for others to see? Ivy withdrew her hands from his grip, stepping back. Damien's eyes were sharp and icy, without answering her question. Ivy, do I need to remind you, Mr. Lancaster, that we're already divorced? Your wife is Rachel Shaw. Coming to see me, your ex-wife, and detaining me at the ex-wife's house, wouldn't Rachel Shaw make a fuss? Every word from Ivy was barbed, her gaze as sharp as it was gentle no longer. It made Damien feel this side of her was very unfamiliar. He couldn't deny he had been good to Rachel Shaw. They once had a relationship, but they were not suitable, so they parted ways long ago. After marrying Ivy, No matter how well he treated Rachel Shaw, he'd never done anything that wronged Ivy. So he didn't understand why Ivy was making a scene. For such a trivial matter. She aborted the child and disappeared for 5 years. Thinking of her aborting the child, anger surged in his heart. Where did she get the right to abort their child without a word? Divorce in every breath. Ivy Summers, haven't you made enough of a fuss? Back then, you aborted the child. Who gave you the right? A fuss. So, in his eyes, was she doing all this just to make a scene with him? She wasn't in the mood for this. She was truly disappointed in him and their marriage. She didn't want him anymore. Ivy opened the door. Get out. Answer my question. I just wanted to divorce you. I just wanted to abort your child. So what? There was never love between us, right? You don't care about me, nor the child, so why should I keep the child? To stay by your side, being despised by you. Damien's eyes deepened. He didn't understand why Ivy's misunderstanding of him was so profound. When had he not cared about her and the child? Get out, you're not welcome here. Damien nodded. You may not welcome me, but you can't escape. Ivy's face darkened. What do you want to do? You know my purpose here. Come back to Ethelgard with me. In your dreams. Ivy wanted to leave, but Damien stood in the doorway, blocking her exit. He said firmly, Ivy Summers, do you think that after I found you, I'd let you leave so easily? You can't escape, you. Damien's gaze was cold, and his words sent a chill through her heart. He took her by the arm, escorting her with determination out, into the elevator, downstairs, his car parked below. Below, it was all his people. Noveldrama. Damien guided Ivy firmly, seating her into the car. Damien Lancaster, you bastard. Ivy was seated in the car, and Damien also got in. He sneered, and what about you? Aren't you a bastard too? Me, a bastard, without giving a chance for explanation, divorcing, aborting, disappearing for 5 years, causing those who care about you to worry for 5 years. If you aren't a bastard, who is? Those who care about her. Who? Damien gently took her hand. Ivy Summers, do you still remember the old master? You disappeared without a word. The old master worried about you for 5 years, even fell seriously ill because of you. Don't you have any guilt in your heart? Mentioning old Master Lancaster, Ivy paused. Old Master Lancaster had been good to her. In these 5 years, Ivy had also thought of the old master. But she knew clearly that things were impossible between her and Damien. Whether it was Damien or the old master, she believed they couldn't let her raise the 3 children with Lancaster blood. She couldn't let them find out about the children's existence, couldn't be separated from the children, so there was no way she could go back. Drive, Damien ordered. The driver immediately started the car. Ivy was in despair. Once Damien decided to take her back, she couldn't escape now. Fortunately, from their conversation, she realized he hadn't discovered her children. This released some of the tension in her heart. As long as the children weren't discovered, she wasn't afraid, and now her situation could only be dealt with one step at a time. At this moment, a phone rang. Ivy's nerves instantly tightened. She felt for her pocket but didn't find her phone. Looking down, she realized during the struggle to leave the apartment, her phone had fallen to the car seat. She was about to grab the phone in a panic, but a large hand reached it before her. Damien squinted at the words on the screen, Leo baby. It was a call from Leo. Ivy was so frightened she trembled all over, lunging to grab it. Give it back. Damien lifted his hand effortlessly, dodging her. Sternly, sit down properly. So nervous, and even marked the other as baby. He would have to see who it was. Leo, clearly a man's name. Damien directly answered the call. Ivy Summers' face turned pale. It's over. Ivy, are you coming back? Ella Morgan's voice. Mommy. Ivy Summers suddenly grabbed the phone and hung up. Damien Lancaster frowned. He heard it. Someone called out, Mommy, on the phone. His gaze fixated on Ivy Summers, his deep eyes narrowed dangerously. Seeing her tense demeanor, suspicion instantly arose in his heart. Mommy, called you. Ivy Summers clutched her phone tightly, steadying her trembling self. That was my friend's child, calling for my friend. Friend's child. Damien Lancaster coldly repeated those words. Then why are you nervous? Which eye of yours saw that I was nervous? Ha. Damien Lancaster let out a cold laugh. Even though Ivy Summers controlled her expression well, her eyes and actions still betrayed her. You're lying, Ivy Summers. Do you know that your eyes tend to wander when you lie? Damien Lancaster, are you interrogating me? Yes, I am interrogating you. I'm very curious. Back then, who was the doctor that agreed to perform an abortion? Or did you not abort the child at all, and instead gave birth in Iridor, raising the child there? Was the child who just called Mommy the same child from back then? Every question Damian Lancaster asked sent shivers down Ivy Summers' spine. Because he guessed everything right. Novel drama. Ivy Summers gritted her teeth, looking intently into Damian Lancaster's eyes. No, I already aborted the child back then. What are you suspicious about? Do you think I would have kept your child? Damian Lancaster had always doubted whether Ivy Summers really aborted the child. He originally had doubts, but his investigation into Ivy Summers' life in the following years showed she lived alone, which slightly alleviated his suspicions. Yet the phone call just now reignited them. Leo, Mommy. The more Damian Lancaster thought about it, the more he felt that perhaps she never aborted the child back then. Since you won't admit it, call this number back to prove it to me. Ivy Summers tightened her grip. Not daring. Did I guess right? Ivy Summers pressed her lips together as Damian Lancaster's gaze bore into her, full of suspicion. She knew if she didn't make this call, it would be tantamount to admitting Damian Lancaster's suspicions were correct. Ivy Summers clenched her phone. She had no choice but to take the gamble. Fine, you suspect me, right? I'll call. She opened her phone and dialed the number. Damian Lancaster looked at her as if trying to discern clues from her expression. The call was quickly answered, and in the quiet car, a woman's voice emerged. Hello, Ivy, why aren't you here yet? Leo's getting anxious waiting. Ivy Summers' heart tightened sharply. Auntie Ivy, come quickly. Mommy and I are both waiting for you. Damian Lancaster listened with pursed lips. It was the child's voice from earlier. Hearing this, Ivy Summers immediately understood and said, Leo darling, I'm sorry. Auntie Ivy is dealing with something here and can't come play with you tonight. Why not? Auntie Ivy, you promised you'd come play with me today. Auntie has encountered something here and needs to handle it. What happened? Ella Morgan also asked. Ivy, what's wrong? Did something happen? Do you need help? It's nothing, don't worry. Alright then, when will Auntie Ivy come to play with me? In a couple of days, Auntie will come in a couple of days to play with you. Okay, Auntie, goodbye. Goodbye. Ivy Summers hung up the phone. Damian Lancaster furrowed his brow. The child on the phone called Ivy Summers, Aunt, so the earlier, Mommy, must have been addressing the woman on the other end. Could he have been mistaken? Holding her phone, Ivy Summers breathed a heavy sigh of relief inside, looking at Damian Lancaster. If you still have doubts, you can investigate yourself. Damian Lancaster said nothing, and Ivy Summers sensed his sudden cold aura. Ivy Summers felt fortunate that they were so in sync, otherwise, Damian Lancaster would have figured it out tonight. Meanwhile, on the other side, the three little ones and Ella Morgan all breathed a collective sigh of relief. Ivy Summers hadn't returned for so long, answered the phone without speaking, and suddenly hung up. Something was definitely wrong, so when the call came again, Ella Morgan cautiously tested it out first. As expected, something had indeed happened. Godmother, Sophie is worried about Mommy. Did Bad Daddy take Mommy away? Ella Morgan's face was full of concern. It was clear that only when encountering Damian Lancaster would Ivy Summers hide the child's identity. So, Ivy Summers must currently be with Damian Lancaster. I want to rescue Mommy. Leo, with a serious expression, picked up his little backpack, ready to head out. Me too, Sophie immediately followed, the little one full of momentum. Ella Morgan took hold of the two little ones. Where are you going? You can't go anywhere. Your mommy is most afraid of you being discovered. Are you planning to run and give yourselves away? But Bad Daddy took Mommy. Mommy is in danger. Sophie was extremely anxious. Trust your godmother. Your mommy is not in danger right now. Damian Lancaster won't do anything to your mommy. As long as you aren't discovered by him, she will be fine. But Sophie is worried about Mommy. Sophie's eyes reddened, on the verge of tears. Ella Morgan quickly comforted her. Don't cry, Sophie. Sophie, your mommy just told you not to worry, so she must have a way. Can you stay with your brothers at Godmother's house for now? But Mommy, Nathan came over and hugged Sophie. Good Sophie, we need to listen to Mommy, and stay at Godmother's house. Otherwise, Mommy will worry. Do you want her to worry? Sophie doesn't, so Sophie needs to be good. Sophie, with reddened eyes, looked at them and tried hard to wipe away her tears. Okay, Sophie is the best. Nathan looked at Leo. Leo had no choice but to begrudgingly put down his backpack. Leo will be good too. With Leo and Sophie persuaded, Ella Morgan now had the responsibility of taking care of the three of them, honoring Ivy Summers' trust. She managed to coax them back to their rooms to sleep. The three little ones didn't cause her any trouble, obediently lying down on their little beds. Ella Morgan held her breath, gently closing their room door, then took out her phone to call Ivy Summers, intending to try to find out what happened. But Ivy Summers' phone was already unreachable. Ella Morgan was anxious, but there was nothing she could do. She knew very well that Ivy Summers was genuinely afraid of the children being discovered, so her primary duty was to look after these three kids. Ella Morgan turned off the living room lights and returned to her room. Half an hour later, in the dark, everything was quiet. A small figure quietly slipped out of the room, feeling their way through the dark, silently opening the front door. The little figure slid out through the door gap with ease. Gently closing the door, no one noticed as the little one, relieved, switched on a flashlight. Two silhouettes ahead suddenly turned their heads. Leo's eyes widened. Brother, Sophie. The three little ones looked at each other's outfits and instantly understood each other's intentions. Are you planning to rescue Mommy too? They said in unison. Nathan patted his forehead. We're truly Mommy's children. Sophie said, Mommy was taken by the bad daddy, how can Sophie just sit and do nothing? Leo agreed wholeheartedly. Exactly. Nathan was helpless. He originally planned to go alone, but now, well, he could only take them along. You two, stay close to me. Sophie nodded vigorously. Sophie is the best and will be obedient. Ivy Summers was escorted back to the presidential suite in the hotel by Damien Lancaster. Hearing the door open, Rachel Shaw walked out cheerfully. Damien, you're back. Suddenly, she saw the woman standing next to Damien, and her voice halted. Ivy Summers. The Ivy Summers who had been missing for 5 years. Rachel Shaw couldn't believe it. Ivy lifted her gaze, and upon seeing Rachel Shaw, her expression turned cold. Back then, at her mother's funeral, Rachel Shaw wore a red dress and told her the reason Damien didn't come was that he was with her caring for her mother. She knew Rachel did it on purpose, to provoke her. Unfortunately, the Ivy Summers of that time, overwhelmed by her mother's death and realizing the truth about her husband, couldn't control her emotions. Even knowing Rachel's intentions, she followed along and divorced, leaving. Rachel must have been quite pleased with herself back then. A chill rose in Ivy's heart. Damien, why is Ivy Summers here? Is she why you left in such a hurry earlier? Hearing Rachel's questioning, Ivy turned to Damien, changed her expression, slipped her arm into his, and raised an eyebrow with a smile. Oh, Miss Shaw is here, it's all my fault. If I knew Miss Shaw was here, I wouldn't have come with Damien. Damien raised his eyebrows, aware that Ivy was doing this on purpose. He should have pushed her away, but curiously, he didn't. Instead, he stood there cooperatively, watching her smile like a cunning fox. Rachel's face turned green. So, Damien rushed out earlier because he found Ivy Summers. And he brought Ivy back to the hotel. She tried hard to maintain her composure, but seeing Ivy standing close to Damien, doubt sprouted wildly in her heart, and she couldn't help but step forward to confront Ivy. Ivy let go of Damien and sidestepped. Rachel pushed nothing, almost stumbling herself. Rachel turned back angrily to look at Ivy. Ivy lifted her eyebrows with a smile, a very mischievous smile. Mad, of course. Back then, she had deliberately provoked her like this. Return the favor in kind. Ivy was doing it on purpose. Rachel's eyes reddened, looking pitifully at Damien. Her. Damien had been watching Ivy perform the entire time. Seeing the triumphant expression on her face, he didn't feel repulsed. Instead, he found this Ivy much more comfortable than the cold and distant Ivy. Damien. Seeing Damien still looking at Ivy, Rachel was about to go crazy with urgency. Damien snapped back and looked at her. I just found her. Grandpa wants to see her. She'll come back to Ethelgard with us. What? Damien not only found Ivy but also wants to take her back. Damien looked at Ivy. You will stay here tonight. Am I sleeping with you? Ivy asked on purpose. She knew Damien would definitely refuse, she just wanted to provoke Rachel. Damien glanced at her. You can. Ivy was momentarily stunned. What? Ivy stood there in shock. He agreed. Damien saw her not moving, and mocked in a low voice, scared now. Would Ivy be scared? Ha ha. She really was scared. Damien's presidential suite had several rooms. According to the design layout of the suite, Ivy randomly picked a room that was least likely to be occupied, walked in directly, and closed the door. Damien watched her walk into the room and chuckled. She actually dared. Rachel stood there, her eyes filled with a furious hatred, her hands tightly clenched. Ivy Summers, bitch. After 5 years, she hadn't given up and still came back to fight for Damien. Why doesn't this woman just accept her fate? Once Ivy entered the room, all the energy she had used to outwit them drained away. She leaned against the door, slowly sliding down to the floor. She noticed when she came in, there were Damien's security personnel downstairs and near the entrance. She couldn't escape. Although she had just made the call, the 3 little ones must be extremely worried at this moment. Thinking of this, Ivy immediately took out her phone, wanting to call them. Press the phone. When it rains, it pours. The phone had run out of battery and shut off. Ivy placed the phone aside, holding her face in her hands, feeling somewhat collapsed. At this moment, the 3 little ones had successfully arrived at the hotel by taxi, noveldrama. In the stairwell, Nathan wore a serious expression, his fingers swiftly and skillfully operating the computer. Soon, Nathan hit the enter key. All right, in 1 minute the entire floor where Mommy is will lose power. We will sneak Mommy out during the chaos. Leo and Sophie looked earnest. Understood. Ivy was in the room thinking of ways to leave, anxiously waiting. At that moment, the lights suddenly flickered, and the surroundings plunged into darkness. Ivy looked up. A power outage. She was about to open the door when she heard Rachel's voice outside. Damien. The power is out. I'm scared of the dark. Damien came out of the study. What's going on? Sir, there's a hacker intrusion into the power system, causing the outage. A hacker? Damien, I'm scared. Why would there be a hacker? Damien frowned. Go check it out. Yes. Ivy listened closely for any sounds, realizing the ones who had just come in were the 2 security guards near the entrance. They were now tasked by Damien to investigate the power outage. This meant there was no direct security at the door now. Ivy then heard Damien saying to Rachel, I'll take you back to your room first. All right. The sound of departing footsteps. Did Damien leave with Rachel? Which meant there should be no one outside now. Though she couldn't be sure. She could only take a gamble. Ivy dashed out the door, and just then, someone called her, Mommy, in the darkness. Ivy was startled, questioning if she had heard wrong, and tentatively called out, Nathan, Leo, Sophie. The 3 little ones, wielding flashlights, bounded towards her. Mommy, we came to rescue you. Ivy, looking at the 3 little ones, broke into a cold sweat. It's so dangerous. How did you get here? We came to save you, Mommy. We diverted everyone outside, so come with us quickly. Ivy couldn't believe these 3 kids had just come over like that. The place was too dangerous. Ivy had no time to ask them how they did it. They had to leave first. It's too dangerous here. Hurry, follow Mommy. Just as she was about to take the 3 little ones to leave, the next second, a beam of light shone straight over from the front. In the light, everything was clearly exposed. Ivy and the children are caught. Who is it? This deep voice. Ivy Summers and the 3 little ones froze on the spot. Thud, thud, thud. The footsteps behind her were getting closer, each step thumping on Ivy's heart. Ivy's legs were trembling. She shut her eyes tightly. It's over. The footsteps stopped behind Ivy. Miss, are you heading out? Huh. Ivy turned around and saw it was the hotel manager, holding a flashlight, probably here to resolve the power outage. I sincerely apologize, our power system has malfunctioned. We have dispatched a team for an emergency repair. If you're heading out, please watch your step. Ivy snapped back to reality, forced out an unnatural smile, and nodded, yes, sure. Sorry for the inconvenience. Ivy's body still trembled slightly. As soon as the manager walked away, before she could breathe a sigh of relief, several beams of light shone from the other end of the corridor. Ivy's heart jolted in alarm. She reacted quickly, grabbing the clothes of the 3 little ones, and swiftly pulled them into the room. Damien Lancaster approached and crossed paths with the manager. The manager respectfully greeted Damien. President Lancaster, how soon can it be restored? The manager quickly replied, don't worry, President Lancaster. It'll be restored soon. I'm very sorry for the inconvenience caused. Damien found the power outage suspicious. They said it was a hacker intrusion, but only this floor was suddenly without power, as if the target was specific. He had sent people to investigate, but there were no leads for now. Back in the presidential suite, Damien glanced at Ivy's room, which was tightly closed. He remembered Ivy was afraid of the dark. Inexplicably driven by curiosity, Damien walked over. He gently pushed open the door. Inside was silent. He scanned the room with the light but saw no one. Did Ivy take advantage of the chaos to run? Novel drama. Damien's face suddenly darkened. He stepped inside. Seeing the scene in front of him, Damien frowned. What are you doing? Damien suddenly appeared behind Ivy, startling her into a shiver. She stayed frozen in place, forgetting to move. She lifted her head, meeting Damien's gaze, and with a trembling voice, asked, when did you come in? What are you doing? Damien looked at her posture and asked again. Ivy was kneeling on the floor, in an extremely awkward position, leaning against the edge of the bed, her hand under the bed doing something. Realizing she was still kneeling, Ivy hurriedly stood up, forcing a grin, dropped my phone, was picking it up. Damien stared at Ivy silently, seemingly unbelieving. You need to lie on the floor to pick up a phone. Were you sniffing it out? Ivy struggled for an excuse. The power's out, I couldn't see, had to feel around with my hands, right? Damien squinted slightly. Ivy nervously twisted her fingers, unsure if he'd believe her. After a few moments of silence, he asked, did you find it? Ivy nodded, found it. At that moment, the lights suddenly came on, illuminating the room. Damien looked down, his gaze falling on the phone on the floor. He raised an eyebrow and asked, this is called, found. Ivy looked at the phone on the ground and forced a smile, quickly bending down to pick it up. Under the bed, the three little ones had already huddled into a small ball, tightly covering their mouths, afraid to make any sound. Damien stared at Ivy for a while, aware her actions were odd, but couldn't figure out what she was up to. He glanced around the room but didn't see anything unusual. Damien withdrew his gaze, his voice cold, I will definitely take you back. You'd better not try any tricks. All Ivy wished for at this moment was for Damien to leave quickly. She tried to maintain a normal expression, your security is outside. I couldn't leave even if I wanted to. Indeed, she couldn't leave. Thinking of the three little ones hiding under the bed, Ivy felt like crying but had no tears. What was this? Capture 1, get 3 free. Damien took a few steps towards the door, and Ivy thought he was finally leaving. Just as she was about to let out a sigh of relief, Damien only went to close the door. Ivy's breath caught in her throat, watching him, you're not leaving. Damien sat on the couch, raising an eyebrow, this is my room. You want me to leave? Isn't this an empty room? Ivy turned her head, finally noticing a few documents on the table and Damien's clothes hanging in the closet. Realizing she had chosen Damien's room at random, Ivy's face slightly flushed. Damien's long eyebrows rose slightly as he lit a cigarette, leisurely watching her. It seemed he was giving her the option to either stay or leave. But Ivy had no intention of leaving. The three little ones were currently huddled under the bed. She couldn't imagine what would happen if Damien discovered them. Meeting Damien's gaze, Ivy took a deep breath and asked, could you stay in another room? You want this room? Ivy nodded, smiling ingratiatingly. Damien chuckled lightly, no. Ivy's smile faltered slightly, can we negotiate? No. Damien put out his cigarette and stood up. In a low voice, he said, I'm going to take a shower. If you don't plan on leaving, then stay and sleep together. As she watched Damien walk into the bathroom, Ivy ran a hand through her hair. From under the bed, Sophie poked out a little head and softly asked, Mommy, can we come out now? Ivy cautiously glanced towards the bathroom, gesturing for the little one to remain quiet and signaling her to hide back. Sophie obediently crawled back. This room wasn't safe anymore. Ivy needed to move the children. She quietly opened the door, aiming to check if anyone was outside, and inevitably locked eyes with Julian Jacobs. Ivy was momentarily stunned, forcing a bitter smile. Special Assistant Jacobs, not going to bed this late. Julian stood up from the couch, I'm waiting for Mr. Lancaster. You're waiting for him, to sleep together. Julian held his breath. This lady certainly spoke her mind. I have something important to report to Mr. Lancaster. He's showering. Perhaps you could rest first. No, this matter is of utmost importance. Ivy looked at him, quite troubled. She knew Damien's assistant wouldn't be swayed by anyone else. Ivy could only silently close the door. Outside was Julian Jacobs, inside was Damien. Ivy rubbed her hair, feeling frustrated. Not long after, Damien finished his shower and emerged from the bathroom. He wore a black bathrobe, partially open, revealing a set of firm abs. Undried water dripped down his hair, as he stood there seemingly relaxed yet lazy. Realizing Ivy hadn't left, Damien raised an eyebrow meaningfully, not going. Ivy's gaze lingered on his abs, her cheeks reddening. She hurriedly averted her gaze. Thinking of Julian, she pointed towards the door. Julian's at the door, he has something to discuss with you. Damien looked at her, headed for the door, and opened it. What is it, sir? The power outage investigation has concluded, but it's not quite what we expected. Damien took the tablet Julian handed him and walked towards the study. In the study, Damien looked at a surveillance screenshot. The image clearly displayed 3 children. His gaze locked on these 3 children, and his eyes narrowed slightly. What do you mean by showing me this? These are the suspects. Damien Lancaster raised an eyebrow. 3 little kids. The photo showed the backs of 3 young children, appearing to be about 4 or 5 years old, each carrying a bulging little backpack. That's right, this is the only suspicious group we've identified after reviewing the surveillance. Additionally, we tracked the hackers' location, which shows they're still in this hotel, very close, possibly still on this floor without leaving. Kids, hackers. Damien couldn't quite connect the 2 groups. But he could confirm the hackers' target was clear. They were disrupting the security system targeting this area. As for why they were doing this and whether they had other purposes, Damien couldn't determine. Since they're still here, go investigate and find them. Yes. Damien's gaze deepened as he looked at the photo. The little girl's back was blurry, but her clothes were very familiar to him. Like the kid who drew on his car. Damien pondered. The kid who drew on his car, the kid who answered Ivy Summers' call, appearing in the hotel, the kid suspected of being a hacker. After finding Ivy Summers, quite a few kids have appeared around him. Though everything seemed coincidental, but too many coincidences aren't coincidences anymore. Damien returned to the room, and Ivy Summers was already gone. But he knew she couldn't have gone far, at most to another room. At this time, Ivy had already taken the 3 little ones to another room. Quietly closing the door, Ivy turned around, placing her hands on her hips to look at the 3 little ones, Nathan, Leo, Sophie. Did my words just go in one ear and out the other? The 3 little ones stood behind Ivy with their hands clasped, looking at her in a pleading manner. Nathan extended his hand, taking responsibility. Mommy, I brought Leo and Sophie here. You can scold me. Leo is also responsible. Don't blame Big Brother. Leo stepped forward as well. Sophie tugged at Ivy's clothes. Mommy, I'm sorry. Sophie didn't listen. It was Sophie who wanted to come. Don't blame Big Brother and second brother. Ivy knew the 3 little ones meant well by coming to rescue her, but it was truly too dangerous. Ivy had no idea what would happen if they were discovered tonight. The 3 little ones opened their hands, standing there with very good attitudes, waiting for Ivy to scold them. Seeing them like this, how could Ivy bear to scold them? Especially Sophie, whose eyes reddened and tears fell, making Ivy's heart ache. Ivy sighed, squatting down to look at the 3 children, reaching out to embrace them. Darlings, Mommy knows you mean well, but this is too dangerous, you understand? We know we were wrong, the 3 little ones said in unison. It's good you know. You mustn't do this again. Ivy patted their little heads. Now is not the time to blame you. Mommy needs to think about how to get you out of here. Nathan looked up. Mommy, aren't you coming with us? Ivy shook her head. Given the current situation, she knew running would only cause more trouble. Ivy no longer planned to run away. Some things have to be resolved. One can't hide forever. Ivy steadied her mind and said, Darlings, listen to Mommy. Tomorrow I'll go back to Ethelgard with Damien Lancaster. In the morning, stay hidden in the room and don't come out. Once Damien and the others leave, I'll contact your godmother to pick you up. The 3 little ones exchanged glances. Their eyes sparkled with mischief, as if plotting something. Did you hear me? You must be good this time. Yes, we will. In the room separated by just one wall, Damien had his people check all rooms on this floor, finding no one, and the location signal quickly vanished. He smoked cigarette after cigarette. Whether due to suspicion or not, he felt these frequently appearing kids were too unusual. Ivy Summers also seemed strange in many ways. Even though everything had an explanation, there were still loopholes. For instance, the woman picking up the children was not the same woman answering the phone. Novel drama. For instance, the child called Leo, calling, Mommy, on the phone. And tonight's suspected hackers, appearing and disappearing kids. The first child appeared at Ivy Summers' workplace, the second in her phone contacts, and now these three at the hotel where Ivy was staying. It seemed all related to Ivy Summers. At this moment, Damien highly doubted whether Ivy Summers had really aborted the child back then. Julian Jacobs. Julian Jacobs entered from outside the door. Sir. Keep investigating Ivy Summers. If you can't find anything on her, investigate those around her, check every single one. If Ivy really had a child, he didn't believe no flaws would be revealed this way. Understood. As the sun rose, Ivy woke the three sleeping little ones. Afraid someone would come in, she could only have them continue to hide under the bed. Sure enough, soon there was a knock on the door. Ivy walked over to open the door. It was Julian Jacobs, Damien Lancaster's assistant. Julian stood at the door and said, "Ma'am, I'm divorced from him, don't call me ma'am." Then Miss Summers, the private jet is ready. Sir and Miss Shaw have already gone over first, please come with me." Ivy nodded. All right. Ivy followed Julian out of the room, and as she closed the door, she saw Leo sneakily sticking his head out from underneath the bed. Ivy quickly gestured with her eyes for Leo to hide properly. Leo quietly withdrew, whispering, "Mommy has already left." Sophie nestled between her two brothers, looked at both and asked, "What about us?" Mommy said we should stay in Iridor, but Sophie is scared Mommy will be bullied by Bad Daddy when she goes back. I think so too. There's also a bad auntie with Bad Daddy. Leo and Sophie exchanged a glance. Leo suggested, "Why don't we go back to Ethelgard too and protect Mommy in secret?" Sophie agrees. Sophie's pretty big eyes shone brightly as she looked at Nathan beside her. Nathan shook his head. "I don't think that's possible." Sophie turned around and eagerly told Leo, "Big brother says it's possible." Leo, "Then let's find the weird uncle to help us go back to Ethelgard." Sophie turned to Nathan, "Big brother, do you think that's a good idea?" Nathan emphasized, "It's dangerous, I don't think it's." Sophie raised her small chubby hand to cover Nathan's mouth. "Big brother says it's okay." Leo and Sophie high-fived each other. "Let's do it that way." Nathan was left speechless with black lines on his forehead. Going back is too dangerous and easy to get noticed. For safety's sake, he doesn't support it. Sophie hugged Nathan, softly asking, "Big brother, aren't you afraid Mommy will be bullied?" "Yes." Sophie nodded, asking again, "And do you want Mommy to be bullied?" "No." Sophie nodded again. "Right, so who's going to protect Mommy now?" "We are." "Yes, yes, yes, so we have to go back, right?" "It seems. That's how it is." 5 hours later, Damien Lancaster's private jet landed on the private tarmac at Ethelgard International Airport. Looking at this familiar city, Ivy Summers felt a whirlwind of emotions she never expected to return in such a way. Exiting the plane, Damien Lancaster and Rachel Shaw walked ahead, with Ivy Summers following behind. To prevent her from escaping, 4 bodyguards trailed closely behind her at all times. Ivy Summers sneered inwardly, "She's already back, does he still fear she'll run off?" Ivy Summers paused in her steps. "I need to use the restroom." Julian Jacobs halted and said, "Miss Summers, please hurry, we will wait for you." "Okay." Damien Lancaster stopped and glanced at Ivy Summers walking in the opposite direction. "What is she up to?" Julian Jacobs replied, "Miss Summers said she's going to the restroom." Damien Lancaster frowned. This woman would stall for time if she just said so. Damien Lancaster stopped to wait for her. At that moment, 3 little ones had also come to Ethelgard on a private jet and exited the terminal at the airport. Leo lifted his little head and looked around. "So this is the city where Mommy grew up." Sophie was bouncing happily. "Mommy will definitely be very happy to see us." Nathan shook his head, his little face serious as he sternly observed Leo and Sophie causing a ruckus. He believed that when Mommy saw them, she'd be shocked rather than pleasantly surprised. Nathan sighed deeply. To have 2 lively little siblings. What trouble, brother? Sophie needs to go to the restroom. Brother will go with you. No need, you guys wait here for Sophie. After saying this, Sophie immediately dashed towards the restroom. The little one was a bit anxious, running quickly and not noticing the person in front of her. She ran into them head-on. The person's leg was long and sturdy, making Sophie fall on her bottom. Damien Lancaster furrowed his brow and looked down, seeing a little girl sitting on the ground. "It's you, the little crybaby." Sophie looked up and directly locked eyes with Damien Lancaster. "Bad Daddy, oh no, how can it be such a coincidence?" Without a word, Sophie scrambled up to run away. Damian Lancaster recalled the little girl who appeared at the hotel last night, though he couldn't be sure it was her, there was a possibility. His long arm reached out and grabbed the little girl. Wait a moment. Sophie clutched her little stomach. She really needed to pee. What are you doing here? Sophie tightly closed her little mouth. Need to pee. Need to pee. Sophie really needed to pee. Seeing her not speaking, Damian Lancaster didn't let her go. The first time at the auction, the second time at the hotel, now again at Ethelgard Airport. Encountering this little girl 3 times in 2 days was too coincidental for Damian Lancaster not to be suspicious. Seeing the little girl's bizarre expression, Damian Lancaster squatted down and asked, "Why are you here alone? Where are your parents?" Sophie didn't know how to respond. "Did you come by yourself?" She couldn't say she came with her brothers. Sophie could only nod, then attempted to run. Feeling urgent, very urgent, Damian Lancaster pulled her back. This little girl appeared to be 4 or 5 years old, flying alone from Iridor to Ethelgard. Before Damian Lancaster could say anything, Sophie burst into tears. Damian Lancaster was at a loss. Was he really that terrifying? Did this little girl cry every time she saw him? Damian, she wet herself. Rachel Shaw pointed at Sophie in disdain. Damian Lancaster looked down and saw that the little girl's pants were wet. Sophie felt extremely embarrassed and began crying loudly. "Bad uncle, why did you hold me back?" Sophie wanted to go potty. Wah. Damian Lancaster was overwhelmed, so the little girl's strange expression earlier was because she was holding it in. The little girl cared about her dignity, and wetting herself in public was doing a number on her feelings. Seeing her tear-streaked face, Damian Lancaster felt some pity. He stood up, took off his suit jacket, and wrapped it around Sophie. Rachel Shaw watched in disbelief, intending to stop him. "Damian, it's dirty, just leave her." Damian Lancaster ignored her and used his jacket to wrap Sophie up, picking her up. "I've covered you, no one saw it, don't cry." Sophie's eyes and nose were red, but enveloped in the big jacket, Sophie felt a bit of safety, gradually calming down. "Did you come alone, or did you get separated from your parents?" Damian Lancaster patiently asked her. Sophie couldn't mention coming with her brothers. "I came alone." Damian Lancaster saw that the little girl didn't seem to be lying. In such a situation, Damian Lancaster couldn't just leave her there. Alone. Better to find things out and send her back properly. "I'll take you to change clothes and then let your parents come pick you up." "I don't want to, I want." "Brother." Sophie spotted her 2 brothers who had come out looking for her since she hadn't returned for a while. Sophie. "Bad daddy." Nathan and Leo were shocked. How did Sophie end up with Damian Lancaster? Damian Lancaster instructed Julian Jacobs to contact Sophie's parents as he carried the little girl to the car. Rachel Shaw stood aside, watching unbelievingly. Damian Lancaster had a germophobia. How could this be? He was being too kind to this inexplicably appearing child. Ivy Summers was in the restroom attempting to borrow a power bank to charge her phone and contact Ella Morgan, but Ella's phone was unreachable. Ivy Summers was a bit anxious but couldn't linger in the restroom for too long. She could only go out first. Just outside the restroom, Ivy Summers saw Damian Lancaster carrying something out. Ivy Summers asked Julian Jacobs next to her, "Who is Damian holding?" Julian Jacobs replied, "A little girl who came to Ethelgard alone, so plans to contact her parents to pick her up." Ivy Summers smirked slightly. He still had some kindness left. "Let's go." Rachel Shaw and Damian Lancaster got into a car. Ivy Summers got into the car behind. "That's Mommy." Leo and Nathan hid in a spot, watching them leave. Nathan saw Ivy Summers and Sophie both being taken away. Immediately panicking. "It's over. Sophie was taken by Bad Daddy again. What should we do?" Nathan wasn't flustered. "Don't panic yet. We'll find a chance to contact Mommy later. For now let's follow them." The 2 little ones ran out, getting into a taxi and instructing it to follow Damian Lancaster's convoy. An hour later, the car stopped at Lancaster Manor. After 5 years away, it still looked as grand as before. The Lancaster family was one of the top noble families in Ethelgard, and the manor's sheer size was awe-inspiring. Just seeing the gates inspired respect. Damian Lancaster walked ahead carrying Sophie, while Rachel Shaw clenched her teeth secretly. Damian Lancaster loved children so much, it was fortunate Ivy Summers hadn't had the child back then. Otherwise, she would have no place here. Ivy Summers got out of the car, and Rachel Shaw looked back at her, warning in a cold voice, "Ivy Summers, don't think that just because you've come back with us, you have any chance with Damian. Put those thoughts away. Damien brought you back only because old Master Lancaster wanted to see you, nothing else. Ivy Summers wanted to laugh. Did she stop just to warn her? Was she concerned about Damien or not confident in herself? Ivy Summers ignored her and walked inside. Seeing Damien Lancaster return, the servants immediately welcomed him. Young master, you're back. Yes, Damien Lancaster responded lightly and handed the little girl to a servant. Take her to get cleaned up. Is it Damien who's back? Hearing the commotion at the door, a noblewoman wearing a light blue kippah with a shawl on her shoulders walked out. The noblewoman was exquisitely dressed and well maintained, though in her 50s, she appeared just over 40. She was Damien Lancaster's mother, Serafina Kennedy. Seeing Damien Lancaster return with a child, she was surprised. Damien, whose child is this? Found at the airport, Serafina Kennedy's brightened eyes dimmed. She thought perhaps the child Ivy Summers was supposed to have had back then was brought back by Damien Lancaster. But it wasn't. Just as Serafina Kennedy was about to say something, she saw Ivy Summers walk in behind. Upon seeing Ivy Summers, Serafina Kennedy's expression paused, staring at her for several seconds as if to confirm it was really her, Ivy Summers. Novel drama. Auntie Kennedy. Ivy Summers nodded politely. It's really you. Serafina Kennedy quickly walked up to Ivy Summers, her eyes filled with anger. You actually dared to come back. Tell me, where is my grandson? Where did you take him? Back then, when Serafina Kennedy heard that her beloved little grandson was gone, she was so furious that she fainted on the spot. For these 5 years, Serafina Kennedy has been utterly hating Ivy Summers. At this moment, seeing her, the anger that had accumulated over 5 years erupted uncontrollably. Serafina Kennedy reached out and grabbed Ivy Summers. Ivy Summers, where's the child from back then? You didn't abort the child back then, you lied to us, didn't you? Serafina Kennedy was emotionally agitated, although everyone said Ivy Summers had aborted the child. But she never believed that a mother could be so cruel as to abort her 7-month-old child. Mom, Damien Lancaster spoke, grandfather wants to see her, let her see grandfather first. See old Master Lancaster, does she have the face to see him? Back then, old Master Lancaster was so fond of her, and what did she do? She left without a word, and old Master Lancaster fell seriously ill because of her. Rachel Shaw stood by watching this scene, her lips curled slightly. She had expected that Ivy Summers' return would result in such an outcome. Aborting the child was a capital offense to Serafina Kennedy. Serafina, a robust voice sounded. Everyone looked up to see old Master Lancaster standing on the second floor with a cane. Old Master Lancaster's gaze landed on Ivy Summers, and he spoke, Ivy, come up. Upon seeing old Master Lancaster, Ivy Summers felt a pang of guilt. She nodded, tightened her lips, and walked upstairs. Dad, you still defend her, you know how ruthless she was back then. Old Master Lancaster's eyes were deep, and his usually emotionless face was full of authority. He glanced at Serafina Kennedy, and though she was furious, she could only keep her mouth shut, not daring to question old Master Lancaster too much. Aunt, please calm down. Rachel Shaw gently patted Serafina Kennedy's back. It's not worth getting angry over someone like this, be careful not to harm yourself. Serafina Kennedy took a deep breath, acknowledging Rachel Shaw's sensibility, and her gaze towards Rachel became a bit softer. Rachel, you sit for a moment, I have something to ask Damien. Rachel Shaw nodded obediently. Okay. Damien, come with me. Serafina Kennedy called Damien Lancaster upstairs. Upstairs, in old Master's study. Ivy Summers paused at the door for 2 seconds before walking in. The old butler stood properly to the side. Upon seeing Ivy Summers, he greeted her politely. Young madam, you're back. Yes. Facing old Master Lancaster, Ivy Summers called out, Grandfather. Old Master Lancaster gazed at her calmly. Back. Yes. The old master looked older than he did back then, but his presence was undiminished, a single look enough to make one reflect repeatedly on every step they just took for mistakes or omissions. The legendary figure in the business world back then certainly wasn't a mere fame. Grandfather, I'm sorry, back then Old Master Lancaster lowered his eyelids, shook his head. Ivy, you don't have to apologize to me. I know it was Damien who did wrong back then. He was the one who wronged you first. Grandfather saw what he did and has already reprimanded him, but he didn't sign the divorce agreement you left behind. As he spoke, old Master Lancaster gestured, and the butler handed over the divorce agreement from 5 years ago, placing it before Ivy Summers. Ivy Summers furrowed her brow, not expecting that Damian Lancaster hadn't really signed the divorce agreement. Why, he liked Rachel Shaw so much, he should be eager to divorce and marry her. Ivy, you left in a hurry back then, now grandfather wants to know, is there still a chance between you and Damian? Hearing this, Ivy Summers shook her head. Grandfather, back then you let me marry Damian Lancaster to repay my father's kindness, providing me a lifetime of support. But Damian doesn't love me, and continuing this marriage is torment for both of us. I don't want to stay with a man who doesn't love me, so I'm sorry, grandfather, but I can't continue this marriage. You insist on a divorce? Yes, Ivy Summers replied firmly. Old Master Lancaster nodded, understanding Ivy Summers' character well. Her departure back then had already been her decision. Ultimately, it's Damian who wronged you. Old Master Lancaster gestured again, and the butler placed another document before Ivy Summers. It was another divorce agreement. The difference was that this new one was drafted by Old Master Lancaster himself. Ivy, grandfather respects you and won't force you to continue this marriage with Damian. Have a look at this divorce agreement. Ivy Summers picked up the divorce agreement, her eyes showing a hint of caution. She knew that Old Master Lancaster cherished her, but the affection of such a shrewd man was not without limits. As expected, her divorce agreement back then demanded nothing but the divorce itself. Whereas Old Master Lancaster's divorce agreement offered her 10% of the Lancaster Group's shares, along with $10 billion, a villa, and some storefronts in the city center. This divorce compensation was absolutely extravagant. But as Ivy Summers read the last clause, stating that the child's custody belonged to the man, her heart skipped a beat. Ivy, the terms in the agreement are the Lancaster family's compensation to you. Ivy Summers' heart pounded as she put the agreement down. Grandfather, the child's custody belongs to the man. What child? Old Master Lancaster sighed. Ivy, the Lancaster family owes you, and grandfather will try to compensate you as much as possible within his power, but the Lancaster family's child cannot be taken away, he must return to the Lancaster family. The old master's voice was gentle, unhurried, clearly using a tone of negotiation, yet to Ivy Summers' ears, it left no room for negotiation, novelle drama. The old master's affection had its limits, and the children of the Lancaster family were his bottom line. He could guiltily compensate her with a large sum of money, but the child had to stay. This was non-negotiable. Ivy Summers maintained her composure, looking at Old Master Lancaster with clear eyes. Grandfather, you must be joking, I already aborted the child back then, I have no child. Ivy, you can deceive Damian, but not grandfather. Grandfather, believe it or not, I truly aborted the child back then, I can't sign this divorce agreement. Old Master Lancaster looked at Ivy Summers quietly, not angered. Ivy, you understand grandfather, and grandfather understands you, take your time to consider, no need to rush your answer. Grandfather, there is no child, that is my answer. Ivy Summers stood firm on her stance. Old Master Lancaster understood clearly, remained silent for a moment, then said without forcing her, all right then, let's not discuss this now. You just got back today, grandfather has prepared the dishes you like, stay and have a meal with grandfather. Ivy Summers nodded, okay, then grandfather, I'll head out. First, all right, go ahead. Leaving Old Master's study, Ivy Summers' mind was restless. Ivy Summers didn't know whether Old Master's purpose today was to test her or to be 100% sure she had a child. All she could do now was insist she had no child. Walking through the corridor, passing by a room, Ivy Summers overheard a conversation. Damian, I still think Ivy Summers didn't abort the child back then. It was Serafina Kennedy's voice. Being a mother myself, I know how difficult it is for a mother to abort a 7-month-old fetus. Damian Lancaster's voice was low. I investigated, she's been living alone all these years. Have you thoroughly checked? Yes. Serafina Kennedy shook her head angrily, then she must be very cruel. Damian Lancaster remained silent. Serafina Kennedy continued, in any case, we must keep an eye on her. If she didn't abort the child, and the child is alive, he must be brought back to be raised in the Lancaster family. When you and Rachel get married, I'm sure Rachel, being well-read and sensible, will help you raise the child well. Ivy Summers felt suffocated in her chest. They were speculating whether she had aborted the child, and if she hadn't, they insisted on bringing the child back, even intending to have Rachel Shaw raise her child. Ivy Summers clenched her fists. Sophie had just finished her bath with the maid's help and was dressed in clean clothes. Sophie had just run out of the room when she saw Ivy Summers. Sophie was very excited. Mommy, being somewhat far away, and Sophie calling out softly, Ivy Summers didn't hear and turned to go downstairs. Sophie hurriedly chased after her but was stopped by a servant. Little one, wait a moment, Auntie will dry your hair. No need, thank you, Auntie. Sophie ran in the direction of Ivy Summers. Noveldrama. Ivy Summers had already gone downstairs. Rachel Shaw sat on the sofa, watching Ivy Summers, whose face looked ugly, walk down. She laughed and asked, "So, have you realized how unwelcome you are in this family? If I were you, I would have left on my own and not stayed here to be an eyesore." Ivy Summers was currently in a foul mood, not having the energy to spar with her here. Rachel Shaw's face suddenly turned dark when she saw Ivy Summers ignoring her. She extremely hated Ivy Summers' indifferent demeanor, filled with arrogance. Compared to now, she preferred to see Ivy Summers in despair and looking pitiful when she discovered that Damien was accompanying her mother back then. Her gaze fell on the bracelet on her wrist. Rachel Shaw secretly curled her lips and raised her hand, shaking it slightly. "This bracelet is truly beautiful. Damien said it suits me well. What do you think?" Of course, Rachel Shaw knew this bracelet belonged to Ivy Summers and had heard it was a relic left by Ivy's mother. When Ivy Summers saw the bracelet, her heart was fiercely pierced, and a chill emerged in her eyes. "Do you like my things that much?" "Your things? Are you referring to this bracelet?" Rachel Shaw stood up, walked up to Ivy Summers, and blinked innocently. "This bracelet was given to me by Damien. On what basis do you claim it's yours? Do you have any proof?" When she heard it was given by Damien, pain still flashed in Ivy's cold eyes. "How disgusting." Rachel Shaw gleefully raised her hand, examining the bracelet. "It's really beautiful." She smiled and leaned into Ivy Summers' ear, her voice exceedingly provocative. "Ivy Summers, this bracelet on my wrist makes it mine, and not just this bracelet, Damien is mine too." "Is that so?" Ivy Summers slightly raised her eyebrows. "Is Damien yours? It seems like he hasn't even signed the divorce papers from back then, right? He and I are still legally married, and you keep claiming what's yours. Have you shamelessly brought it to the forefront already?" Rachel Shaw's expression changed upon hearing this. "What did you say?" Ivy Summers looked at Rachel Shaw. "I thought you had what it takes. For the past 5 years, you stood openly by Damien's side, but it turns out, I overestimated you. I gave you 5 years, and you didn't even reach the edge of being Mrs. Lancaster, so in what capacity were you saying Damien is yours just now? The other woman, a mistress, you." Rachel Shaw was provoked by Ivy Summers' words. She was very aware that Damien hadn't signed the divorce agreement back then, but she didn't care. Because after Ivy Summers left, she was the only woman by Damien's side, and he still cared about her. Everyone had recognized her as Mrs. Lancaster, and she never explained, enjoying everything this identity brought her. She believed Damien hadn't divorced because he hadn't found Ivy Summers and couldn't get the divorce certificate. Once he found her, he would divorce her immediately and marry her. Rachel Shaw anticipated this every day. But this anticipation was shattered by Ivy Summers at this moment. The words mistress, lover, deeply stabbed her. How did Ivy Summers have the right to insult her this way? Damien's true love was her. The unloved one is the mistress. Rachel Shaw should be the rightful wife of Damien Lancaster. "Ivy Summers, it seems you haven't come to your senses. Back then, when your mother passed away, and you were in utter sorrow, Damien was accompanying me, taking care of my mother, celebrating my birthday, and lighting splendid fireworks for me. Everyone knew the one he loved was me. In a relationship, the unloved one is the mistress, and you are the mistress in our relationship. And think about it, if it weren't for your dad saving old Master Lancaster's life, who took pity on you and let you marry Damien, what right did a lowly person like you, with no family background and limited means, have to marry Damien? Oh right, your dad. I see that your dad saved old Master Lancaster with ulterior motives, hoping to use it as leverage to secure a position. But his fate was unfortunate, and he died. You see, people like you are always looking for a handout, willing to take any risk just to gain a small advantage." Ivy Summers clenched her hands tightly by her sides, her nails digging deep into her palms, but she was oblivious to the pain. Ivy Summers' father was a firefighter. When old Master Lancaster was trapped in a fire, her father selflessly rushed in to save him. And her father succumbed to his injuries, with 80% of his body severely burned. To Ivy Summers, her father would always be her hero, yet Rachel Shaw was now using his sacrifice as a tool for humiliation. Ivy Summers trembled with anger, her cold gaze like icy blades directed at Rachel Shaw. Rachel Shaw loved to see Ivy Summers furious, yet helpless against her. What could she do? Rachel Shaw, the eldest Miss Shaw, was born noble. She was something a person of meager standing like Ivy, who would be nothing without the Lancaster family, could never compare to. Even if she was angry, she couldn't do anything to her. Rachel Shaw knew exactly where to hurt Ivy Summers the most, and she continued to mockingly say, "Your dad made a foolish sacrifice, and your mom was fragile too. Your mom didn't even reach 50 when she died, right? Although I'm really curious, with your family in such desperate circumstances, how did your mother manage to give you such a fine jade bracelet? Did she compromise her integrity to earn it?" Slap. A clear slap sound made the servants around stop what they were doing and look up in shock at the two women. Rachel Shaw clutched her face, staring in disbelief at Ivy Summers, keeping her position with her head turned from the slap, momentarily forgetting to react. "You dare hit me, Ivy Summers, you vile woman, dare to hit me. Believe me, all." Slap. Before she could finish, another slap from Ivy Summers landed on her face. Ivy Summers didn't hold back at all with the two slaps, leaving Rachel Shaw completely stunned. The living room fell silent. After a while, Rachel Shaw finally reacted, screaming out loud. Standing on the stairs, about to come down, Sophie watched the entire scene, feeling that her mommy looked so cool. Immediately after, Sophie saw Damian Lancaster and Serafina Kennedy emerge. Sophie stepped aside, leaned against the wall, and watched with wide eyes. Rachel Shaw covered her face with both hands, biting her lip tightly. By the time Serafina Kennedy approached her, tears were already streaming down. "What happened, Rachel? What's wrong, Auntie?" Rachel Shaw looked at Serafina Kennedy, miserably unable to speak for a while, before saying, "Auntie, I don't know what I did wrong to suffer such humiliation. Did she hit you?" Serafina Kennedy raised her head, angrily glaring at Ivy Summers. Damian Lancaster's gaze fell on Rachel Shaw's red and swollen face from the slaps. The clear handprint showed the person who hit her didn't hold back. Damian Lancaster's frosty gaze swept towards Ivy Summers, his voice cold. "Why did you hit her? She deserved it." Ivy Summers was not a person without a temper. Especially when it involved her family, that was her untouchable bottom line. Not to mention two slaps to Rachel Shaw, Ivy Summers wished she could tear her mouth apart. "Is that your reason for hitting someone? She insulted my parents and used my father's sacrifice to humiliate me. She suggested my mother had compromised her honor." The story pauses at a breathtakingly tense moment, with all the secrets seemingly hanging over the characters' heads. One unexpected decision, a meaningful glance, or a wrong move could change everything. Who will keep their secrets? Who will pay the price? Complicated relationships, hidden schemes, and suppressed emotions are all waiting to be revealed in the next chapters. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the upcoming developments, where even the smallest detail could turn everything upside down. A day of mourning, where trust is betrayed and secrets explode. Ivy stands between pain and suspicious gazes. Every decision could change their fate. Search for Betrayal on a Mourning Day on the Woodcloud Audio channel to discover the next unexpected twists.